Chapter 1620. As soon as Wu Dao's true body left, a crack appeared in the sky above Penglai Island, and a terrifying aura descended. There was no figure flashing in this void crack, only a dim light that flickered in and out of it. It was as though there was an additional eye in the sky that was patrolling the entire Penglai Island. However, Wu Dao's true body had already left, and the eye did not discover the figure of Wu Dao's true body. It merely stared in the direction where Wu Dao's true body left for a while. A moment later, beams of light burst forth from the crack. The five-clawed divine dragon and the primordial soaring serpent on Penglai Island turned into nothingness and disappeared. Then, the eye gradually disappeared and the crack closed. A small boat floated above the East Sea. A fisherman in a straw raincoat lay on the boat. A fishing net was casually piled under his feet, and a green bamboo hat covered his face. The fisherman removed the green bamboo hat from his face, revealing an unkempt face. His eyes flickered with a strange blood-red light. The fisherman was none other than the smoky wave cultivator. What sharp senses! He actually sensed danger and fled first. The smoky wave cultivator sat up slowly and murmured softly, "That's the earth-slaying sword art." The smoky wave cultivator pondered. Someone from the sword sect. Someone from the sword sect has cultivated the earth-slaying sword art to this level? Strange. The smoky wave cultivator frowned slightly. There's no divine power aura on Penglai Island at all. Could it be that it's not a Mahayana patriarch? But if it's not a Mahayana patriarch, how could he suppress Penglai Island and tear through the void to leave? The smoky wave cultivator thought for a moment and chuckled. "I don't believe that you can escape from me." As he spoke, the smoky wave cultivator waved his hands in front of him and drew mysterious runes in the air with his fingertips. Then, the scenes that happened just now on Penglai Island flashed before the smoky wave cultivator's eyes. However, the smoky wave cultivator frowned again when he saw those scenes. Among those scenes he could only see a purple figure. The figure's face seemed to be shrouded in a layer of fog, and he could not see it clearly. "I don't believe that I can't deduce your background." A hint of fog appeared in the smoky wave cultivator's eyes, and the hand seals in his hands changed even more frequently and mysteriously. His surroundings had been completely enveloped by numerous runes. After a while, the smoky wave traveler's body shook, and the fog in his eyes dispersed. The surrounding runes also shattered and scattered between heaven and earth. He failed. The smoky wave cultivator narrowed his eyes. However, before long, he chuckled and stood up. Tossing the fishing net beneath his feet into the ocean, he murmured softly, "Interesting. To think that there would be someone in Tianhuang mainland who could escape from my heavenly net." Enigma Palace. Due to the descent of the dragon phoenix true body and the suppression of the divines, Enigma Palace fell into a temporary silence. No sect or faction dared to act rashly at this time. However, everyone knew that this was only the calm before the storm. Next, Enigma Palace might very well suffer a violent storm. Enigma Palace might even be engulfed by the torrential rain. Suddenly, a huge fissure opened up in the void, and rays of dazzling golden light burst out from within. Then more than a dozen figures appeared. A terrifying pressure descended, and all the living beings of the myriad races kept quiet out of fear. They looked at the dozen or so figures in the sky in horror. These figures stood in the air like real gods. The living beings of the myriad races couldn't even see the faces of these figures clearly. All they could see were streaks of divine light. Although the faces of these figures could not be seen clearly, the beings of all races knew that the Protoss had arrived. Although only a dozen or so Protoss had come this time, each of the Protoss was stronger than the Protoss that had died in the hands of the Dragon Phoenix true body. "The real test has come," Yinlan said to Xiao Yao telepathically. "The leader is the clan leader of the Protoss. He's in the peak Mahayana stage. The 13 Protoss around him are also in the late Mahayana stage." Xiao Yao was shocked. He knew very well that even a random late-stage Protoss was enough to kill the Dragon Phoenix true body, let alone the clan leader of the Protoss, who was at the peak Mahayana stage. Those were two completely different levels of power. If the primordial races reached the late-stage Mahayana stage, it meant that their bloodline, body, essence spirit and various other powers were comparable to human emperors who had comprehended a peerless divine power. In fact, many times, because of the strength of their bloodlines, late-stage Mahayana races could suppress emperors who had only comprehended a single peerless divine power. 10,000 years ago, Long Ran, who was also the red-headed ghost, was actually at the late-stage Mahayana stage. It was this late-stage Mahayana ancestral dragon that caused a huge calamity. A great empire of the North region was reduced to ruins overnight. 2 super sects of the Buddhist monasteries were destroyed as well. That was the destructive power of a late-stage Mahayana ancestral dragon. But now, there were a total of 13 late-stage Mahayana ancestral gods, and a perfected Mahayana stage, the clan leader of the Protoss. Xiao Yao could not help but be shocked by such a terrifying lineup. Patriarch Heavenly Shaman, and the others finally relaxed when they saw that. As long as the clan leaders of the primordial races descended, the Dragon Phoenix true body would not be able to cause any trouble. As for Enigma Palace, there was even less to fear. A perfected Mahayana ancestral god's strength was equivalent to a human emperor who had comprehended 2 peerless divine powers. That was because perhaps only human emperors who had comprehended 3 peerless divine powers could fight against the Protoss's bloodline and body. The mystic emperor of Enigma Palace had indeed comprehended 3 peerless divine powers. However, there was only one mystic emperor, and there was nothing to fear. Sister, hurry and get the clan leader to come over, Xiao Yao urged. Why is the clan leader here? Yinlan shook her head slightly. If your master doesn't have a sufficient reason, our Kuan race will definitely not take the risk with him. Look at the attitude of the barbarian race. It's the same. The reason why the barbarian race hasn't made a move or expressed their stance is because they're waiting for Araki Takashi to see what trump cards he has. The Protoss clan leader looked down from above. His expression darkened as he said coldly, "Who did this?" "It's him." Patriarch Heavenly Shaman and the others hurriedly stood out and recounted everything that happened just now. Before Patriarch Heavenly Shaman and the others could finish, an ancestral god could not hold back and attacked. That ancestral god was at the late-stage Mahayana stage. Rubbing his hands in front of him, a dazzling golden sword was formed instantly and slashed down at Qinglian and the Dragon Phoenix true body. The void trembled when the sword descended. It wanted to kill both of Araki Takashi's true bodies. The power of that sword had completely exceeded the range that the Dragon Phoenix true body could withstand. Chapter 1621. The Dragon Phoenix true body's expression was unchanged as he waved his hands in mysterious trajectories in front of him. He channeled his essence spirit and summoned the spirit turtle shield. At the same time, a bronze square tripod that was more than 10 feet tall flew out from his glabella. The bronze square tripod emitted an ancient aura and was filled with cracks, as though it would shatter into a pile of scrap metal with a single knock. However, the spirit turtle shield could not defend against the power of a late-stage Mahayana ancestor god. The Dragon Phoenix true body prepared to hide in the bronze square tripod with Qinglian's true body. Humph! Right then, a cold harumph sounded from the void. After that, space split apart before the golden sword could descend, and then a crimson-red figure charged out and actually smashed the golden sword into pieces. The figure was tall and strong. He was dressed in bloodstained armor and was wrapped in thick chains. His face was rough, and he had a torrential heroic aura. The figure emitted a violent and scorching aura, and his eyes seemed to be bursting with flames as he glared at the Protoss with a murderous aura. Long Ran, it's you? The Protoss's patriarch stared at the figure and frowned slightly. Long Ran was the red-headed ghost. That's me. The red-headed ghost grinned. You Protoss sure are shameless. A late-stage Mahayana ancestor god wants to kill the early-stage Mahayana dragon's young master. Humph. The Protoss's patriarch said coldly. What young master of the dragons? He's a human. If you Long Ran protect a human, you'll harm the entire dragons. Can you bear that responsibility? F***ck your mother's bullsh***t. The red-headed ghost's temper was fiery, and he did not hold back in his words as he cursed. Long Mo is a taboo dragon phoenix. Are you blind to say that he's a human? The living beings of the 10,000 races were dumbfounded. No one would have thought that this expert from the dragon clan would not have the slightest demeanor of an expert. He spoke like a hooligan in the marketplace, shooting his mouth off. "You," the Protoss's patriarch's expression darkened after being scolded. He sneered. "Get your dragon's patriarch to come out. A crippled dragon like you who has been imprisoned for 10,000 years isn't fit to speak to me. I'm the patriarch of the dragons." The red-headed ghost burst into laughter. The Protoss's patriarch frowned. Right then, the void behind the red-headed ghost tore open, and a series of powerful figures walked out. All of them were elders of the dragon race, who were in seclusion. The weakest of those elders were at least at the late-stage Mahayana realm. Furthermore, there were more than 20 of them. Long Ran is the patriarch of the dragon tribe. His decisions are the decisions of the dragon tribe. A dragon clan elder said in a deep voice. The Protosses of the dragons' patriarch. He had not expected that after Long Ran returned to the Dragon Bone Valley, after being imprisoned at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for 10,000 years. Not only was he not ostracized, he even became the clan leader of the dragon race. Fufu, what a joke! An ancestral god sneered. Without a leader, you actually let a crippled dragon who has been imprisoned for 10,000 years become the patriarch. I think you dragons are doomed. Ha 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 ha. The red-headed ghost reared his head in laughter and nodded repeatedly. Good. You Protoss keep calling me a crippled dragon. Today, I'll make sure you Protoss don't return. Kill them, the red-headed ghost hollered with a murderous aura. He let out a long howl and transformed into his dragon's form right away. His dragon body that was several thousand feet long tore through the air. The dragon scales on his body were tightly arranged and shone with a cold light. Flames burned all over his body and sharp claws and teeth as he charged towards the ancestral god that just now had spoken. Roar! Roar! Behind the red-headed ghost, more than 20 ancestral gods also transformed into their dragons' forms. In an instant, 20 gigantic divine dragons circled above Enigma Palace. Their massive bodies coiled around and almost covered the sky. Their auras surged and shocked all the races. The patriarch of the Protosses' expression changed starkly. He never would have thought that Long Ran would immediately attack them after they had only exchanged a few words. He was planning to kill them all. This was not a casual spar. The dragons had already transformed into their true forms. He was going to kill them all. The living beings of the myriad races were shocked when they saw that. Patriarch Witchcraft and the others were even more dumbfounded. They had not expected that this seemingly crazy dragon's patriarch would be even more domineering than Araki Takeshi. He wanted to kill more than 10 ancestral gods opposite him, after merely exchanging a few words. Long Ran, you're crazy. The patriarch of the Protoss hollered. Boom! The patriarch of the Protoss wielded his golden shield and blocked the red-headed ghost's dragon tail. His entire body shuddered, and he staggered 3 steps back as his expression changed. The power released by the red-headed ghost far exceeded his imagination. In his knowledge, the red-headed ghost was only at the late-stage Mahayana realm. In the Battle of Great Qian, the red-headed ghost was severely injured and was imprisoned for 10,000 years. In his opinion, if the red-headed ghost's combat strength was still present, he would not have been imprisoned at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for 10,000 years. However, he did not expect that the red-headed ghost would return after 10,000 years and reach the perfected Mahayana realm. His combat strength had increased exponentially, and even he could not defend against it. With a swing of his tail, the red-headed ghost sent the patriarch of the Protoss flying. Thereafter, he opened his gigantic dragon mouth and spewed out scorching flames. The rain of fire descended, and the ancestral gods dodged with all their might. However, the rain of fire was incomparably dense, and the ancestral gods could not dodge completely. Once they were touched by the rain of fire, a bloody hole would be burned through their bodies instantly. Ah! The 13 ancestral gods let out tragic cries. The red-headed ghost swooped down and descended in front of the ancestral god, who had mocked him earlier. Sword of Misfortune. The ancestral god did not dare to hesitate and conjured a gigantic sword with both hands. Darkness surrounded it, and it was extremely similar to what Su Zimo had seen in Kunlun ruins. This was a peerless divine ability of the Protoss. Shatter! The red-headed ghost hollered and reached out with his menacing dragon claws, grabbing the sword of misfortune and crushing it. Flames burned brightly and incinerated the power of darkness. The red-headed ghost extended his dragon head and devoured the ancestral god in a single gulp. Exclamation point! The dragon's mouth closed. Golden blood splattered out from between the gaps of the red-headed ghost's teeth in a shocking manner. Every drop of blood contained an extremely terrifying aura. As they descended into the void, they caused the void to tremble continuously. The living beings of the 10,000 races retreated hurriedly, afraid that they would be tainted by the golden blood. That was the blood of a late-stage Mahayana ancestral god. That drop could even severely injure conjoint body mighty figures. The essence spirit of the ancestral god was devoured by the red-headed ghost. Even if fresh blood flowed out, he could not be reborn and died on the spot. Long Ran, how dare you kill my ancestral god? The patriarch of the Protoss shouted. Are you trying to start a war with the Protoss? Do you dragons want to suffer the wrath of the Protoss and the other primordial 5 races? Wrath my ass! Long Ran cursed. How dare you try to scare me? I'm going to kill you today. Chapter 1622. Enigma Palace. Divine powers filled the air and the world shook. In the firmaments, divine dragons coiled one after another and fought against the ancestor gods that shone with divine light, causing a series of deafening explosions. Golden blood splattered endlessly. The living beings of the 10,000 races were shocked as they watched everything unfold. The dragons did not test the waters at all when they attacked. They wanted to kill the Protoss, as though they had a deep grudge against him. There were few ancestor gods to begin with. As for the Protoss clan leader, he could not defend against the red-headed ghost's attacks. With that, it was almost a one-sided situation for the dragons against the dozens of ancestor gods. If not for the fact that they were all late-stage Mahayana ancestor gods, with strong combat strength and exuberant life force, they would have been drowned in the dragons' attacks long ago. Even so, in less than half an instance's time, 5 out of the 14 ancestor gods, including the Protoss clan leader, were dead. Those were not ordinary Protoss, they were ancestor gods. Furthermore, they were top experts among the ancestor gods. But now they were surrounded by dragons just like that. The Protoss clan leader's eyes widened as he roared. Wu Feng, Golden Light, Dark Crow, what are you guys waiting for? The moment his voice was heard, the firmaments began to tremble. Shing! Shing! A series of jarring sounds could be heard, as though the entire sky was torn apart by countless powerful living beings. The first to descend were more than 20 cultivators in dark green robes. The leader had a skinny face and sparse hair. His eyes were dark green, and shone with a dark glow as he held a white bone staff. Wu Feng, the clan leader of the witch race, was at perfected Mahayana. The 20-odd witches behind him were all at late stage, or mid-stage Mahayana as well. On the other side, balls of blazing golden flames descended one after another like dozens of blazing suns that hovered in midair and shone on Enigma Palace. The temperature of the entire Heaven Evolution mountain range rose instantly. Many trees began to burn. Countless living beings in the mountain range were reduced to ashes in an instant. Even the weakest of the living beings of Enigma Palace was the Dharma Daojun. At that moment they were drenched in sweat. Dozens of scorching suns were suspended in the sky. It was simply the end of the world. Gradually, the dozen or so blazing suns slowly stretched out and transformed into their true forms. They were a dozen or so three-legged golden crows, which then transformed into human forms. Only then did the temperature of Enigma Palace gradually return to normal. The leader of the Golden Crow clan was Jin Shua, the patriarch of the Golden Crow clan. He was at the peak of the Mahayana realm. Behind the Golden Crow clan, many dark lights suddenly descended from the sky, densely packed. They weaved about in midair, continuously shouting. There were actually more than 50 of them. The Rakshasa had arrived. Dark Crow Rakshasa, perfected Mahayana, Rakshasa clan leader of the Rakshasa clan. Among the 50-odd Rakshasas, there were early-stage, mid-stage and late-stage Rakshasas. On the other side, thick blood-red vines interweaved into an inescapable net in midair. The entire Enigma Palace was shrouded in the color of blood. Every blood vine was dripping with sticky blood. The stench of blood was nauseating. The blood vine race had descended. There were more than 20 of the blood vine race's patriarchs who had transformed. Finally, more than 10 patriarchs of the Heavenly Eye race arrived. The Heavenly Eye on their glabella seemed like it was about to open and burst forth with a shuddering power. At that moment, the patriarchs and patriarchs of the primordial 6 races, Protoss, which Golden Crow, Rakshasa, Blood Vine and Heavenly Eye races, had all arrived. Patriarch Witchcraft and the others were invigorated. Ever since the Dragon Phoenix true body descended, they had been suppressed by it the entire time. All of them were fearful and did not dare to act rashly. It was only at this moment that they truly heaved a sigh of relief. Even if Araki Takashi was a taboo, he could not interfere in a fight of this level. However, if the dragons wanted to go against the primordial 6 races, they would be courting death. Long ran. The witch race's patriarch said coolly, "Stop." Caw-caw. The Rakshasa race's patriarch laughed strangely. Long ran. Your temper hasn't changed even after being imprisoned for 10,000 years. The Golden Crow race's patriarch said slowly with a cold expression. Long ran. Don't force us to join forces and kill you and these dragons. If it was just the dragons against the Protoss, the dragons would have the absolute advantage. But now, apart from the Protoss, the patriarchs and late-stage Mahayana patriarchs of the other 5 races had arrived, and the situation was reversed instantly. The patriarchs of the primordial races were all at perfected Mahayana realm and possessed torrential combat strength. Notwithstanding the patriarchs, there were more than 100 patriarchs of the primordial races behind them. The red-headed ghost had a grim expression as he waved his hand and retreated. The red-headed ghost was domineering and seemed impulsive. However, he was extremely calm. Given the current situation, if they were to fight the Protoss rashly, they would only attract disaster, and all the dragons would die here. Under the red-headed ghost's signal, the dragons retreated gradually. Even so, the red-headed ghost still shielded Qinglian and the Dragon Phoenix true body behind him. Everyone. The Protoss's patriarch had a cold expression and said coldly, "Follow me and kill these dragons. These worms have gone crazy. They're clearly going against the primordial 6 races." Fufu. The red-headed ghost laughed. "You're wrong. I only want to kill your Protoss. It has nothing to do with the other races." "You're wrong," the witch race's patriarch said. "The primordial 6 races have already joined forces and are of the same branch. If you want to deal with the Protoss, you're going against the primordial 6 races." Wu Tian, Jin Shua. "I advise you guys to be careful," the red-headed ghost sneered. "If you join forces with the Protoss, be careful that you guys don't fall at the end." "What do you mean?" The Golden Crow race's patriarch frowned slightly. The Heavenly Eye race's patriarch added, "Long Ran, speak your mind. There's no need to beat around the bush." Long Ran chuckled and remained silent. It was not that he did not want to say it, but it was useless even if he did. No one would believe him. What he knew was less than the Dragon Phoenix's true body. This matter could only be said by Qinglian's true body. However, right now, Qinglian's true body was still on the Creation Lotus platform, undergoing her final enlightenment, and could not be awakened. The Heavenly Eye race's patriarch and the others did not think too much about Long Ran's words just now. However, the Protoss patriarch's eyes flickered as he vaguely sensed something. "Everyone, don't listen to his nonsense," the Protoss patriarch said in a deep voice. "That taboo Dragon Phoenix is one of Araki Takashi's true bodies. Right now, both of Araki Takashi's true bodies are right before us. Let's kill them first." "All right," the Bloodvine race's patriarch said sinisterly. "This Araki Takashi killed 2 young masters of our Bloodvine race and countless clansmen. Today, he'll pay with his life. I'm going to suck his bloodline dry personally. Not a single drop will be left. The situation is bad." Among the Kuan race, Lan suddenly said to Xiao Yao, "These primordial races want to touch your master. However, these dragons can't defend against them at all. Sister, hurry and inform the patriarch. Get him to appear and help. Carefree urged with an anxious look on his face. Yinlan shook her head and said resolutely, "The current situation is unclear, and the Kuan race has no reason to stand on the side of the dragons against the primordial 6 races." Chapter 1623. Long ran. The Golden Crow Patriarch said coldly, "Make way. We've already taken a step back. Right now, we haven't killed the taboo dragon phoenix. We only want to kill Araki Takeshi of the human race." The Witch Patriarch said coldly as well. Long ran. The primordial 6 races have jointly issued a kill order. We must kill Araki Takeshi today. If you still want to protect this human, don't blame us for not taking our old ties into account. You're just a dragon. You won't be able to defend against the attacks of the primordial 6 races. The red-headed ghost had a grim expression. He knew very well that the Witch Patriarch was right. The current situation was extremely disadvantageous for the dragons. The dragons had sufficient reasons to protect the true body of the dragon phoenix. However, there was no reason for them to protect Qinglian's true body. That was also the reason why the Kuan and barbarian races did not express their stance. If the primordial 6 races wanted to join forces to deal with the taboo dragon phoenix, the Kuan race would definitely side with the dragons because they were worried that Xiao Yao would be targeted in the future. But now, the primordial 6 races wanted to destroy Qinglian's true body. The Kuan and barbarian races did not want to fight to the death with the primordial 6 races for the sake of a human. Everyone. The red-headed ghost looked at the patriarchs of the primordial 5 races, Wu Feng and Golden Light, and laughed. There's no need to be in a hurry to kill Araki Takeshi. He won't be able to escape even if he's here. Why don't we wait for him to wake up before attacking? Humph, the Protoss Patriarch sneered. Long ran. You're just trying to stall for time. If I'm stalling for time, what are you afraid of? The red-headed ghost asked instead. The Protoss Patriarch had a calm expression and said coldly, I, the Protoss, am fearless. However, anyone I want to kill will definitely die. Cut the crap and make way. The Heavenly Eye Patriarch hollered, and the Heavenly Eye on his glabella seemed like it was about to open with beams of light. The leader of the Heavenly Eye race said coldly, Long ran. The primordial 6 races have already given you face by not killing the taboo dragon phoenix. If you still don't know what's good for you, don't blame the primordial 6 races for joining forces to destroy dragons as well. The red-headed ghost could not let the primordial 6 races kill Qinglian's true body, because only Qinglian's true body knew the truth of the primeval war. Manfeng, are you still not coming out? The red-headed ghost suddenly shouted. Alas! The void cracked open, and a muffled sigh came from within. A gigantic figure that was more than 30 feet tall walked out. His face was rough and his gaze was dignified. When he arrived at Enigma Palace, he was like a gigantic mountain. The leader of the barbarian tribe, Manfeng, had reached the peak of the Mahayana realm. After Manfeng came out, the crack in the void behind him gradually closed up. However, many experts could feel that there were still many experts in the depths of the void. However, none of them followed Manfeng out. Why? Does the barbarian race want to get involved in this mess as well? The leader of the Protoss race shifted his gaze to Manfeng and asked slowly, Don't forget that I haven't settled the score with the barbarian race for the death of the young master of the Protoss. Manfeng remained silent and came to the red-headed ghost's side, standing beside him. Why are you alone? The red-headed ghost glared. Where are the patriarchs of the barbarian race? Are they all F*King dead? Manfeng had an embarrassed expression as he laughed bitterly and sent a voice transmission. The elders of the barbarian race discussed and did not want to get into a conflict with the primordial 6 races because of a human. Of course, if what you said about the primeval war is true, the barbarian race will definitely stand on the side of the dragons and destroy the Protoss. It must be true. The red-headed ghost pointed to Qinglian's true body. He saw it with his own eyes and has evidence. The truth will be revealed once he wakes up. Manfeng was silent and hesitated. The red-headed ghost sneered and raised his brow. Why? The barbarian race suspects me? It's not that they suspect you. More than that, they don't trust Araki Takeshi. Manfeng said, He's only a human after all. Furthermore, the so-called truth he spoke was way too shocking. The barbarian race has no choice but to be cautious. Long ran. Those old fogies have a reason to be worried. After a moment of silence, the barbarian sent another voice transmission. If this so-called truth was fabricated by Araki Takashi himself, it's not impossible for him to sow discord between the primordial 6 races and resolve the crisis of the human race this time round. When he heard that, the red-headed ghost fell silent as well. He could understand the barbarian race's worries. The Kuan race should have the same reservations as well. No matter the truth of the primordial war, the battle between the primordial 9 races and the taboo race had indeed caused them to suffer immense losses. As a result, their fortune was exhausted, and they were suppressed by the human race for such a long time. The barbarian and Kuan races did not want to repeat the same mistake. The 2 primordial races would definitely not place their fates in the hands of a human. The red-headed ghost had watched Suzimo grow up bit by bit. The 2 of them had a deep relationship, and he understood Suzimo's character. If not for that, he would have suspected as well. He would not place the fate of the dragons in the hands of a human either. At that thought, the red-headed ghost was relieved. However, he was still unwilling to let Manfong off and mocked. You're truly a coward as a clan leader. You don't even have a follower. I'm no longer the clan leader of the barbarian race. Manfong smiled. The red-headed ghost frowned. Right then, blood chi spread from the clan leader of the Bloodvine race, as he asked with a murderous aura. Manfong, is your barbarian race going to sever ties with the primordial 6 races because of a human as well? I'm no longer the clan leader of the barbarian race. My actions from now on have nothing to do with the barbarian race. Manfong raised his voice. Today's battle was my own decision. When he heard that, the red-headed ghost shuddered and looked at Manfong in disbelief. He felt a surge of hot blood surge into his heart, and his eyes turned red. The barbarian race was unwilling to believe him and refused to step forward. However, Manfong still stood out. Manfong had abandoned his identity and status. Even though he knew that he was bound to lose this battle, he still rushed over without hesitation to fight alongside him. Today's battle was my own decision, and had nothing to do with the barbarian race. Although that sentence sounded simple, it sounded extremely heroic to the red-headed ghost. What are you looking at? Manfong grinned. We're brothers. Even if the world doesn't believe you, I'll definitely believe you. All right. Long Ran's heart surged as he nodded and shouted, Brother! A commotion broke out in the crowd. Lan sighed softly with a conflicted expression. Some of the experts of the primordial races knew that Manfong and Long Ran had a deep relationship. However, nobody expected that the 2 of them would be able to disregard life and death completely for the sake of calling each other brothers. In the cruel and merciless world of cultivation, such feelings were so unique and precious. The dragon phoenix true body, monkey Linghu Ching Ching, night spirit, little fox and the golden lion exchanged glances as well. The 7 brothers exchanged glances and smiled in unison. It was the same for them as well. Chapter 1624. Fufu, the leader of the Protoss race, sneered. Do you think the 2 of you and more than 30 ancestral dragons can stop the combined forces of the primordial 6 races? The difference in strength between the 2 sides was way too great. Even if Manfong rushed over, he could not change the situation. Long ran Manfong. Suddenly, the leader of the witch race chuckled. The 2 of you are truly interesting. Araki Takashi is clearly a paragon of the human race. Instead of the patriarchs of the human race coming to protect him, you guys are risking your lives to protect him. Why bother? Haha. The leader of the Rakshasa race grinned in laughter. The patriarchs of the human race are all cowards. They're so scared that they hide in the ancient battlefield and don't dare to come out at all. Patriarchs of the human race? They're our blood food. The leader of the Bloodvine race laughed as well. They merely took advantage of the loopholes in the ancient war. Do they really think that they're qualified to become the lord of Tianhuang mainland? Long ran. These ancestral dragons are top experts of the dragons, Skywitch said with a fake smile. Why are you sending the ancestral dragons behind you to their deaths for the sake of a single human? The patriarchs of the human race aren't coming out to protect the monster incarnate of the human race. Instead, they're sending you dragons to your deaths. What a joke. Sky Witch's words were more terrifying than any divine power. The dragons could risk their lives to protect the taboo dragon phoenix. However, they were not determined enough to protect Qinglian's true body. The moment he said that, more than 30 ancestral dragons behind Long Ran revealed strange expressions as they exchanged glances, as though they were communicating with their spirit consciousnesses. Clan leader, there's no need for us to fight to the death for Araki Takashi's human clone, right? That's right. Araki Takashi's human clone should be protected by the patriarchs of the human race. Some of the ancestral dragons began to complain as well. Long Ran's expression was terrible. Patriarch Wu Hua took a deep breath of air and stood out, cupping his fists. Everyone, the convention of the myriad races, is being held at Enigma Palace. Since all of you experts have descended, can't we sit down and talk? The flames of war are everywhere in Tianhuang mainland and blood flows like rivers. My Enigma Palace does not wish to see the desolation of the ancient era again. Before Patriarch Wu Hua could finish his words, a black light streaked across the sky. Be careful. The dragon phoenix true body exclaimed softly. Pucci. Suddenly, a bloody light burst out from the crowd. A huge head flew high into the air. Judging by its appearance, it was Patriarch Wu Hua of the Enigma Palace. Just now Patriarch Wu Hua was still talking. However, in the blink of an eye, his head had been chopped off. It was too fast. The Rakshasa clan leader had made his move. The combat power of a Rakshasa, who was at the peak of the Mahayana realm, was equivalent to comprehending two ultimate divine powers. Even an ordinary human emperor would die here. Not to mention old ancestor Wu Hua, who was at the early stage of the Mahayana realm. He was completely powerless to resist. The dragon phoenix true body could only sense the danger with its terrifying spiritual perception. Meanwhile, Patriarch Wu Hua did not react at all. Puff! A gigantic blood vine tore through the air and pierced Patriarch Wu Hua's head, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Patriarch Wu Hua's essence spirit was killed by the Bloodvine clan leader before it could escape. Patriarch Wu Hua's corpse fell to the ground with a thud. The crowd was in an uproar. It was only at this moment that the living beings of the 10,000 races reacted. The Rakshasa clan leader laughed sinisterly. What right do you humans have to negotiate with the primordial 6 races? You guys are just a bunch of ants. What rights do you have? Fufu. The Bloodvine race's clan leader laughed as well. The emperors of the human race are all scoundrels who hide in the ancient battlefield and don't dare to come out. Yet, you guys still have the extravagant hope of negotiating with the primordial 6 races? How dare you? Emperors are not to be humiliated. A few patriarchs of Enigma Palace could not help but holler. Many cultivators were enraged as well. No matter what, the emperors of the human race had an extremely high status in the cultivation world, and were not to be humiliated. But now, the dignity of the emperors was trampled mercilessly by the primordial 6 races. Humph! The Heavenly Eye clan leader opened his heavenly eye, and a beam of light burst forth, piercing a human patriarch instantly. The human patriarch's body exploded into a blood mist. Of course, he was dead and his essence spirit was destroyed. The witch clan leader chanted an incantation in secret as well. Suddenly, the gaze of a human patriarch froze, and his expression froze. The life force in his body decreased sharply, and he fell stiffly. There were no injuries on the human patriarch's body, but his essence spirit was already withered. A wisp of green mist floated out from the top of his head, and floated towards the sorcerer tribe leader. The witch clan leader opened his mouth slightly and swallowed the mist. Smacking his lips, he sighed. How weak! It might be more interesting if he devoured the essence spirits of human emperors. Just like that, 3 patriarchs of the human race had already fallen one after another. The Mahayana patriarchs of the human race were almost at the peak of the cultivation world. However, they were like ants in the hands of the patriarchs of the primordial races. They could be crushed to death with ease. Long Ran. The witch clan leader smiled. There are so many humans. Do you dragons want to protect them? The Golden Crow clan leader flapped his wings and grabbed a human patriarch in midair, tearing him into pieces. He sneered. Do you dragons want to join forces with the humans? Ha 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 ha. How interesting. The dragons want to join forces with a bunch of ants. Long Ran was silent. Man Feng sent a voice transmission. Long Ran, why don't you give up? In this generation, the fortune of the human race has run out, and we can't stop the rise of the primordial races. This is the fate of the human race. The eyes of many cultivators seemed to be spitting flames of anger. However, at this moment, no one could stand out. Even the human patriarchs could not withstand a single move from the patriarchs of the primordial races. If they stood out, they would only be courting death. Are you angry? A Rakshasa patriarch sneered. It's useless to be angry. The emperors of this generation of the human race are all a bunch of trash. Many cultivators were silent. The dignity of the human race was trampled mercilessly by the primordial races. However, no emperor of the human race appeared. The anger in the eyes of many cultivators gradually disappeared, turning into disappointment, sadness, and finally confusion. So what if the emperors of the human race were here? Ordinary human emperors could not defend against the experts of the primordial races. More importantly, the emperors of the primordial races had yet to appear. If the emperors of the primordial races appeared, who could defend against them? Perhaps, the emperors of the human race had already given up on the humans of Tianhuang mainland. Perhaps, the emperors of the human race were already prepared to transcend their tribulations in the ancient battlefield and leave this land. Perhaps this was the fate of the human race. The cultivators of the various major sects and factions stood in Enigma Palace, with dazed gazes filled with despair. Only the dragon phoenix true body clenched his fists tightly. He did not believe that all the emperors of the human race would abandon all living beings in the world. Someone would definitely stand out. All of a sudden, the world shook. Chapter 1625. Suddenly, a gigantic crack appeared in the firmaments of Enigma Palace, and a bedazzling golden light burst forth, enveloping the entire Heaven Evolution mountain range. An extremely terrifying pressure descended upon them. Even the expressions of the patriarchs of the primordial races changed starkly. The aura of an emperor? How is that possible? How can there be such a powerful emperor in the human race? The patriarchs of the primordial races were shocked and looked up instinctively. A gigantic scroll that was more than 100 feet long flew out of the crack. It shone with a golden light, and names could be vaguely seen on the scroll. The scroll that was more than 100 feet long hovered above Enigma Palace, like an emperor descending personally, with a wanton might that suppressed the surroundings. Even the experts of the primordial races turned pale against the gigantic scroll. Divine Powers ranking. Some of the patriarchs of Enigma Palace were delighted and exclaimed, the Divine Powers ranking had arrived. The experts of the primordial races narrowed their eyes and channeled their blood chi to resist the might of the Divine Powers, ranking with ferocious gazes. The Divine Powers ranking was a ranking of the ancient battlefield created by Fairy Ling Long. However, the Divine Powers ranking was personally refined by the human emperor and was a true emperor weapon. The Divine Powers ranking guarded the ancient battlefield right from the beginning. Apart from the extremely powerful seal on the ancient battlefield, the reason why the experts of the primordial races could not enter was because of the existence of the Divine Powers ranking. Ever since the ancient war, the Divine Powers ranking had never left the ancient battlefield. Nobody expected that at this juncture, the Divine Powers ranking would leave the ancient battlefield and descend upon Enigma Palace. The dragon phoenix true body was invigorated and lamented internally. Could this be Enigma Palace's backup plan? Right from the beginning, the storyteller old man had not appeared. The dragon phoenix true body believed that even if all the emperors abandoned the human race, the storyteller old man would not give up. It's just a ranking, and it wants to suppress the primordial 6 races? What a joke! A Rakshasa patriarch hollered and his figure flashed. Spreading his wings, he turned into a dark streak of light and charged towards the Divine Powers, ranking with dual sabers in his hands. Buzz! The divine ability ranking shook for a moment, and a golden light shot out, directly striking the black light. The figure of the Rakshasa Patriarch was instantly revealed. Right in front of everyone, the body of the Rakshasa Patriarch exploded into a blood mist. The creatures of all races were shaken, their expressions changing in an uproar. The great ancestor of the Rakshasa clan was in the late stage of the Mahayana realm. His power was equivalent to comprehending a supreme divine power, and he could fight against a human ruler. However, the Rakshasa Patriarch was turned into a blood mist by a beam of golden light from the divine power's ranking. Whoosh! The primordial spirit of the Rakshasa Patriarch flew out and used the blood rebirth technique to quickly form a physical body with lingering fear. Fortunately, he reacted quickly enough. Otherwise, just now, that golden light could have completely obliterated him. Wang! The divine ability ranking shook again. Another beam of golden light descended. The patriarch of the Rakshasa race had just condensed and was penetrated by the golden light before he could react. His body was shattered and his essence spirit was destroyed. He died on the spot. A late-stage Mahayana patriarch of the Rakshasa race was dead. Many cultivators cheered as excitement surged in their eyes. They had been suppressed by the auras of the patriarchs of the primordial races for too long and could barely breathe. But now that the divine powers ranking had descended, they were invigorated. A bunch of ants, what are you shouting for? A patriarch of the bloodvine race was enraged and channeled hundreds of blood vines towards the cultivators of the various major sections. Buzz! The divine powers ranking shook and beams of golden light descended. The golden lights were as dense as rain and enveloped the experts of the primordial 6 races with an extremely terrifying aura. Bang! 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 Many patriarchs of the primordial races released their dermic treasures hurriedly and circulated their blood chi, releasing divine powers to fight against the golden lights. The void trembled. Some of the primordial races could not defend against it and were killed on the spot by the golden lights that descended from the divine powers ranking. Although some of the patriarchs of the primordial races managed to dodge the calamity, their bodies were penetrated by the golden lights. Their essence spirits left their bodies and condensed their bodies once more. They were so frightened that their faces turned pale. The primordial 6 races were in chaos. When the dragon phoenix true body saw that, he was excited as well. The red-headed ghost said sternly, "Someone should be controlling this divine powers ranking. If I'm not wrong, it should be the emperors of the human race." Yes, Manfeng nodded. The attack of the divine powers ranking is clearly targeted and did not attack us. The power of this divine powers ranking is way too strong. Long ran sense for a moment and suddenly said, "I reckon that there are only 10 emperors who can control this emperor weapon. It's a pity that this divine ability ranking alone is not enough." Manfeng shook his head gently. The divine powers ranking trembled continuously and beams of golden light descended. As for the patriarchs of the primordial 6 races, they joined forces and channeled their innate divine powers to defend against most of the attacks. They were already in a stalemate with the divine powers ranking, and were not disadvantaged. The Golden Crow race's patriarch said coldly, "No wonder the human emperors did not appear. So they were hiding in the dark and summoned this emperor weapon." Humph! The witch race's patriarch sneered. This emperor weapon was left behind by the human emperor back then. The strength of you emperors is not enough to control it. I'd like to see how long you human rulers can last. The patriarchs of the primordial 6 races retaliated together and released powerful divine lights that charged at the divine powers ranking continuously. The brilliance of the divine powers ranking trembled, and its power did not seem as terrifying as before. Right then, a phantom suddenly appeared above the divine powers ranking. It was filled with an ancient aura, and had its back facing the living beings of the 10,000 races. Looking at the back view, the experts of the primordial races shuddered with bewildered expressions, as though they had seen something extremely terrifying. This aura? Right then, the figure turned back slowly and gazed at the experts of the primordial 6 races. His eyes were deep and contained a supreme will. The moment the figure turned back, everything fell silent. The pupils of the experts of the primordial 6 races constricted. Many late-stage Mahayana experts of the primordial races were so frightened that they could not control themselves and fell from midair, crashing heavily to the ground. Even Long Ran and Man Fong shuddered, and their eyes were filled with endless shock as they murmured softly, "Human Emperor." The dragon phoenix true body looked at the phantom with disbelief in his eyes as well. He had seen portraits of the human emperor in many ancient books. But now, the human emperor had truly appeared before him. It was 10,000 times more shocking than the portraits. Many cultivators knelt down with excited expressions. Thump, thump. It was not only the human cultivators. The living beings of the 10,000 races knelt on the ground as well. The people of the primordial 6 races could not withstand the pressure brought by the phantom of the human emperor either, and knelt on the ground. Chapter 1626. After all, this was only a phantom, and could not be the true body of the eternal human emperor. Even so, the phantom stood tall and looked down on all living beings. His gaze was deep and contained the unparalleled might of an emperor. This might was definitely not something that a human emperor, who had comprehended 2 or 3 peerless divine powers, could release. This was the true might of the human emperor. The human emperor ruled over all emperors. Against the might of the human emperor, be it the emperors of the human race, or the primordial races, they had to bow down. However, it was difficult for the divine powers, ranking to suppress the experts of the primordial 6 races. However, after the phantom of the human emperor appeared, even the clan leaders of the primordial 6 races revealed endless fear in their eyes, and their hearts trembled. The phantom completely awakened the fear in the depths of the memories of the experts of the primordial races. In the ancient books of the primordial races, there were also many legends about the eternal human emperor. To the primordial races, the eternal human emperor was even more terrifying than a taboo. In the ancient war back then, the human emperor suppressed the emperors of the primordial races almost single-handedly, turning the tides and supporting the dynasty from collapse. To the primordial races, the eternal human emperor was a nightmare that could not be dispelled. Even though the experts of the primordial races had never seen or fought the human emperor in this generation, their fear of him had long seeped deep into their souls. Thump, thump. The experts of the primordial races knelt on the ground one after another with terrified expressions. Among the primordial races, the only ones who could still stand were the clan leaders of the primordial races. How could this be? This is the aura of the eternal human emperor. There's no mistake. The minds of the clan leaders of the primordial races were in chaos, and their faces were pale. Although they could still stand, they did not dare to raise their heads to look at that tall and majestic figure, let alone look him in the eye. The human emperor is not dead. The human emperor was a peerless expert of the ancient era, and it had been countless years since then. However, to think that the human emperor was still alive. More importantly, the commotion caused by the convention of the 10,000 races seemed to have alarmed the human emperor, as a phantom descended and intimidated everyone. Even though it was only a phantom, who would dare to act rashly? The might of the human emperor was feared throughout history. In a palace deep within Enigma Palace, inside, there were 6 figures sitting cross-legged and activating their primordial spirits. Their bodies emitted a powerful aura that was suffused with the might of an emperor. A total of 6 human rulers. One of them was precisely the storyteller of the Enigma Palace. Apart from the storyteller, the robes of the other 5 sovereigns were different. It was obvious that they came from different sections. Beside the 6 emperors was a gray-robed cultivator with a pale face and no beard. It was Lin Xuanji. At that moment, the 6 sovereigns channeled their essence spirits at the same time, and used secret skills to control the divine powers, ranking above Enigma Palace through the void. The divine powers ranking was brought out from the ancient battlefield by the storyteller and the others. The faces of the 6 rulers were somewhat pale. Their bodies were drenched in sweat, and their bodies were trembling slightly. This superpower ranking was an imperial weapon refined by a Renhuang. Normally, if one wanted to control the divine powers ranking, at least 10 human rulers would be needed. In this era, Although the humans were on the decline, and their luck had declined, there were still 20 to 30 rulers. However, not every ruler could abandon their lives and choose to fight against the primordial 6 races, regardless of everything. Many rulers had already cultivated to the Emperor realm. They were just a step away from leaving Tianhuang mainland. However, there was no chance of winning against the primordial races. If they were severely injured, there would be no hope of transcending the tribulation. If they died in this battle, their cultivation over the years would be destroyed and turned into nothingness. It was easy to choose which was more important. In truth, even in the ancient era, not all the emperors could gather together to fight against the primordial races. It was only because the human emperor appeared out of nowhere and shocked Tianhuang mainland with his unparalleled combat strength that the emperors were able to unite. In this era, the storyteller clearly did not have the prestige of the human emperor. Even so, over the years, there were still 5 human rulers who were willing to stand out and fight for the sake of that slim hope of the human race. The storyteller knew very well that in this era, if the humans were to fight the primordial races head-on, they would definitely suffer a crushing defeat without any chance of winning. However, there were only 6 rulers in this convention of the 10,000 races. The moment they appeared, they would definitely be surrounded and killed by the emperors of the primordial races. That was the reason why the storyteller sent this secret skill to the 5 rulers and summoned the divine powers, ranking to suppress the strong enemies. It was an immense burden for the 6 rulers to control the divine powers ranking. After resisting the experts of the primordial races for a moment, the 6 rulers could not hold on any longer. If they forcefully controlled the divine powers ranking and released their divine powers, the essence spirits of the 6 rulers would probably shatter first and be severely injured. Lin Xuanji rubbed his hands at the side with an anxious expression, but he could not help at all. Right then, there was a commotion above Enigma Palace. A gigantic phantom descended and looked down at the world. Its might swept through the 9 heavens and shook the world. When they saw the phantom, the storyteller and the other 6 rulers shuddered and were so excited that they almost cried. The human emperor of all ages. Could it be that the human emperor sensed the danger of the human race and manifested his immortal miracle to descend upon Tianhuang mainland to save all living beings? That must be the case. There's hope for the human race. The few emperors were excited and soared into the air. That's not right. Right then, the storyteller gradually calmed down and shook his head. This is indeed the phantom of the human emperor, but it doesn't seem to have anything to do with him. How can it have nothing to do with the human emperor? A ruler shouted, I can sense that the aura emanating from this phantom is the aura of the human emperor of all ages. Apart from the human emperor, who else can manifest the figure of the human emperor? Even his aura is identical. Apart from the human emperor, who else in the world can manifest such might and aura? The other emperors nodded as well. That's still not right. The storyteller frowned slightly and shook his head. The aura emitted by this phantom is identical to the human emperor of all ages. However, it doesn't seem to have manifested the Tao and skills of the human emperor. Furthermore, if it was truly the manifestation of the human emperor, he would have suppressed these primordial races a long time ago. How could he just stand there motionlessly? The few emperors frowned as well. Although the phantom of the human emperor emitted a powerful might that intimidated the 10,000 races, he did not make a move. That was indeed strange. However, if it's not the means of the human emperor of all ages, who can manifest the phantom of the human emperor so lifelike that even his aura is identical? An emperor asked. The storyteller pondered for a moment and said, There's a treasure that can create such a scene. Since the ancient era, the human emperor's palace has appeared 8 times. The 8th time is in this era, and the successors are Araki Takeshi and the pure maiden of the fiend sex Ji Yaoyan. When the human emperor's palace descended for the 7th time, about 40,000 years ago, a treasure passed down from the human emperor's palace was the human emperor mirror. Chapter 1627. Human Emperor Mirror? The few emperors frowned slightly in deep thought. One of the sovereigns said, "I've heard of this treasure before. Are you saying that the successor of the Hall of Human Emperors summoned the mirror of human emperors and projected the image of the human emperors of all ages above Enigma Palace?" "That's possible." The old storyteller paused for a moment before changing the topic. "However, the successor who obtained the human emperor mirror 40,000 years ago should be dead by now." "Who is he?" "The titular disciple of Daming Monastery, Monk Daming." "So it's him. He has indeed been dead for many years." An emperor continued. "That means that this treasure fell into the hands of someone else by accident." Another person said, "No matter who is in control of the human emperor mirror, the fact that he can stand out to help the human race at this critical juncture means that he's countless times stronger than those emperors who are in hiding." "I'm worried about something else," the old storyteller said worriedly. "Since it's a phantom created by the human emperor mirror, it means that it has no combat strength at all. If I can see the flaws, the emperors of the primordial races will probably be able to as well." The sudden descent of the human emperor's phantom temporarily intimidated the primordial races. However, no one knows how long this situation will last. "Sigh." Another emperor sighed. "We'll delay it for as long as we can. What if the emperors of the primordial races descend?" Suddenly another emperor asked. Instantly, the hall fell silent. A moment later, the old storyteller smiled as though he had made a decision. He beckoned to Lin Xuanji and said, "From today onwards, you'll be the storyteller of this generation." "Old man, you." Lin Xuanji had already realized something and wanted to persuade him. However, before he could finish, he was interrupted by the old storyteller. "There's no need to say anything else. I've already made up my mind. This might be the last hope of the human race." Enigma Palace. The living beings of the 10,000 races knelt on the ground with terrified expressions, not daring to look at the figure in the skies. However, the leaders of the primordial races were able to stand and circulate their blood qi to resist the powerful might of the human emperor's phantom. That human emperor's phantom, however, after a while, the red-headed ghost stole a glance and frowned slightly, as though he sensed that something was amiss. The rulers of the primordial 6 races also began to look up. The human sovereign is not dead. It was the human emperor who sensed the danger of the Enigma Palace. So he manifested his clone and descended on Tianhuang region. The descent of the mystical abilities ranking was the doing of the human emperor. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from the crowd, causing an uproar. The beings of the myriad races were at a loss at first. They didn't know what was going on with the human emperor's phantom. This voice brightened the hearts of all living beings. The patriarchs of the primordial races were shocked. At first, they thought that the rulers of the human race were behind this list. They did not expect that it was the human ruler who made a move. Among the crowd, only the dragon phoenix true body became even more suspicious after hearing this voice. That was because he recognized Lin Xuanji's voice. There was no way Lin Xuanji was telling the truth. Right then, Lin Xuanji changed his position and voice, hollering, "How dare you guys? Why aren't you kneeling when you see the human emperor?" Perhaps because he heard Lin Xuanji's words, the majestic figure in midair moved and took a step forward. Boom! The world shook. A supreme divine might descended, and the mystical abilities ranking shone with divine light once more. The patriarchs of the primordial races raised their heads instinctively and met the human emperor's gaze. Their expressions changed starkly, and they were almost scared out of their wits. Against the aura and might of the human emperor, they could not hold on at all, and knelt on the ground one after another. Even the red-headed ghost and Man Feng knelt down. The might of the human emperor was way too intense. Even though countless years had passed, and he was merely a phantom, no one dared to underestimate him. If this phantom had inherited the Tao and techniques of the human emperor, he would be able to kill all the experts of the primordial races present with a single finger. Who dares to say that the human race isn't qualified? Lin Xuanji roared. The reason why the primordial 6 races did not manage to negotiate with the human race was because the primordial 6 races did not treat the human race as an opponent that they could negotiate with. In the eyes of the primordial six races, the human race was an ant that was not qualified at all. But now that the human emperor's phantom had appeared and descended upon Enigma Palace, the experts of the primordial races, who were mocking the human race, just now had to kneel on the ground as well. Lin Xuanji knew when to stop, and did not continue forcing them. In a flash, he arrived beside the Dragon Phoenix true body. Brother Lin, were you the one who created the commotion of the human emperor's phantom? The Dragon Phoenix true body asked with a voice transmission. No. Lin Xuanji shook his head gently. I reckon that I won't be able to hold on for long. At most, I can delay it for a while. Humph. Right then, a cold harumph sounded from the void. A figure shone with a bedazzling divine light appeared above Enigma Palace out of thin air, and stood opposite the phantom of the human emperor, emitting an extremely terrifying aura. The figure surged with golden blood qi, and shone with a divine light, resembling a god that could not be looked at directly. The Emperor of the Protoss. The commotion at Enigma Palace had finally attracted the Emperor of the Protoss. Even the most ordinary Emperor of the primordial races was equivalent to the Emperor of the human race, who had comprehended 3 supreme divine powers in terms of strength. His true combat strength was even more terrifying. It's over. Lin Xuanji grimaced when he saw that. I'm afraid we won't be able to hide it anymore. The Emperor of the Protoss did not have any fear on his face when he faced the phantom of the human emperor, and was not disadvantaged in terms of aura. What a farce. The Emperor of the Protoss glared at the phantom of the human emperor for a long time. After confirming that there was no danger, he sneered and attacked brazenly. Boom! The God Race's emperor arrived in front of the human emperor's phantom, and threw a punch, directly shattering it into pieces. Many cultivators looked up instinctively. They watched helplessly as the majestic figure of the ancient human emperor was shattered into nothingness by a single punch from the Emperor of the Protoss. The hearts of many cultivators sank gradually. The glint in their eyes dimmed as well. That punch seemed to have shattered the final hope of the human race. How embarrassing! The Emperor of the Protoss looked down at the prostrating primordial races and hollered, all of you stand up. This is merely a smokescreen. To think that you guys would be so frightened. Although he said that, in reality, he was shocked the moment the phantom of the human emperor descended, and almost knelt on the ground. The moment the phantom of the human emperor shattered, in a secret cave in the Heaven Evolution mountain range, a long-haired man's body swayed as he let out a muffled groan. Ugh! The long-haired man sighed softly, and his long hair fluttered, revealing a wound on his glabella. The man put down an ancient mirror in his hands slowly and murmured, I've already tried my best. The rest is up to fate. Chapter 1628. Above Enigma Palace. The Emperor Protoss had descended, and the 10,000 races were cowed. Many cultivators were in despair. Enigma Palace had already caused such a huge commotion, and even brought out the divine powers, ranking from the ancient battlefield. Even the phantom of the human emperor appeared, but it was still shattered mercilessly by the Emperor Protoss. Was the human race going to be suppressed by the primordial 6 races in this generation? Was the human race going to return to the tragic era of being enslaved by the primordial 6 races as food? Greetings, World Howling Shenhuang. Many God Clan experts cried out in unison. World Howling Shenhuang walked down from the firmament step by step. Although his footsteps were slow, no one dared to rush him and reveal impatient expressions. Umph! World Howling Shenhuang harumphed coldly. You guys are truly capable to end up in such a wretched state, when you can't even suppress a bunch of human ants. Reporting to World Howling Shenhuang, the Protoss leader pointed at the red-headed ghost hurriedly and said, It's not that we're incompetent. It's because the dragons stepped in to stop us and started a massacre. Otherwise, we would have suppressed these humans a long time ago. Dragons? World Howling Shenhuang's gaze shifted to the red-headed ghost, and he said slowly, Since the dragons are determined to go to war with the primordial 6 races, that's nothing much. Today we'll destroy the dragons first. The red-headed ghost shook his head with a mocking expression. You caused such a huge commotion in a convention of the 10,000 races that even emperors were alarmed. How many emperors do you have in the vicinity? Why don't all of you show yourselves? Since I'm here, there's no need for any emperors of the primordial 6 races to appear. World Howling Shenhuang said indifferently. I'm enough to sweep through all the emperors of the human race alone. I'll kill any human emperor that dares to appear. World Howling Shenhuang's tone was filled with immense confidence as he declared proudly. Today, the sacred ground of the human race, Enigma Palace, will have to submit to me. Silence filled Enigma Palace. Nobody dared to refute or question him. The Protoss definitely had more than one emperor. And Howling Shenhuang wasn't even the strongest emperor among the Protoss. Even so, Shenhuang's battle prowess was enough to suppress all the human emperors in this world. No one could fight against him. Many cultivators lowered their heads, looking confused. They knew in their hearts that it was very likely that from today onwards, the human race would once again return to the primordial age, that period of darkness where there was no light. Because of the primordial war, the fate of the human race was likely to be even worse. What arrogance! Right at this moment, an aged voice resounded. The hearts of all living beings were greatly shaken. Under Xiao Shenhuang's powerful pressure, there was actually someone who dared to say such words, who had the qualifications to do so. Even this generation's profound sovereign of the human race probably did not dare to use such a tone to converse with Xiao Shenhuang. Xiao Shenhuang's gaze turned slightly serious, and he said in a cold voice, "Who's talking? Scram out." Rumble. Boom. Suddenly, an earth-shaking tremor shook the entire Heaven Evolution mountain range. The living beings of the 10,000 races lost their footing, and their bodies swayed along with it. The ground of the Sky Evolution mountain range cracked open, and a terrifying and ancient aura emanated from within. Immediately after, right in front of everyone, a gigantic divine dragon charged out from beneath the Heaven Evolution mountain range. It swayed its divine dragon body that was thousands of feet long, and countless gravel fell as dust billowed. The divine dragon coiled above Enigma Palace and emitted a shuddering peerless might that even suppressed Xiao Shenhuang's aura. The Emperor of Dragons. This is... All of the dragon's eyes widened as they looked on with incredulity. Even they didn't know that such a terrifying divine dragon was actually slumbering beneath the Enigma Palace. Little Fatty, Demonis G, and the others naturally knew about it. Back when they were fighting outside Enigma Palace, this old dragon appeared once. However, the divine dragon looked a little old, and had lived for an unknown period of time. Even though its whiskers were white, its eyes were still bright and spirited. "Who are you?" Xiao Shenhuang frowned and hollered as well. The lifespans of dragons were even longer than Protosses. Even with Xiao Shenhuang's knowledge, he did not recognize this old dragon. "You don't have to care who I am," the old dragon said slowly. "You just have to know one thing. As long as I'm still in Enigma Palace, you have to behave yourself, let alone flatten it." Although the old dragon's tone was calm, his words were even more domineering than Xiao Shenhuang's. "Old thing, your blood qi is deteriorating. How much lifespan do you have left?" Xiao Shenhuang sneered. "Let me give you a piece of advice. Go back and lie down obediently and don't meddle in other people's business. Be careful that your old bones don't fall apart." Hee. The old dragon chuckled as well. "If it was your Protoss's Tian Shenhuang, he might be qualified to say those words to me. However, a child like you is far from it." Xiao Shenhuang's expression darkened. As an emperor, he was actually called a little doll in front of so many people. Naturally, he felt that he had lost face and was insulted. "Old thing," Xiao Shenhuang said slowly, "watch your words. Don't force me to slay a dragon." "Is that so?" The old dragon sighed gently. "It's been many years since anyone dared to speak to me like that." Before he finished his sentence, the old dragon swayed his 1,000-feet body and suddenly swooped down. An incomparably tragic aura surged over as a huge shadow descended. Xiao Shenhuang's expression changed starkly. He did not dare to be careless and hurriedly channeled his blood qi. Stomping his feet on the ground, he leaped up and charged towards the old dragon. Boom! Xiao Shenhuang and the old man collided heavily with a deafening bang. The world trembled. The living beings of the 10,000 races retreated one after another, distancing themselves from the battlefield. The remnant power released by the two emperors was enough to turn the living beings of the 10,000 races into dust. Even Mahayana patriarchs would not be able to escape alive if they were accidentally sucked into it. Bang! Immediately after, under countless gazes, a figure fell to the ground viciously, creating a huge crater and causing sand and gravel to fly everywhere. In this head-on clash, it was actually the World Howl Divine Emperor who fell into a disadvantage. To think that there would be such a powerful emperor among us dragons. An ancestral dragon whispered, "Why haven't I heard of this old dragon before? I'm afraid this old dragon is even older than your grandfather." The red-headed ghost pondered for a moment and said, "I reckon that he's an expert of the same generation as the Emperor Qianlong of our race." The dragons were shocked. Emperor Qianlong was an ancient name. He was a powerful existence that many dragons did not even know about. However, many ancestral dragons knew that the Emperor Qianlong was the strongest emperor of this generation of dragons. The Emperor Qianlong was an existence that could fight against the Protoss Tian Shenhuang, the Golden Crow Fire Emperor of the Golden Crow race, and the Underworld Witch Emperor of the Witch race. Chapter 1629. Boom! The human-shaped pit exploded and world-howling Shenhuang charged out. He channeled his bloodline phenomenon and propped up a gigantic pyramid that smashed towards the old dragon. Bang! The old dragon swung his thick tail that was covered in dragon scales and whipped world-howling Shenhuang's Jin Dan phenomenon heavily, shattering it. World-howling Shenhuang shuddered and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Swoosh! The old dragon's dragon claw descended, and its sharp claws sliced through the void viciously, grabbing towards world-howling Shenhuang's head. World-howling Shenhuang's finger shone with divine light, and a gigantic golden shield flew out of his storage ring. Clang! In a flash, world-howling Shenhuang channeled his divine power and activated the power of the gigantic golden shield, emitting divine lights that blocked above his head. The dragon claw collided with the gigantic golden shield, and the sound of metal clashing could be heard. Clang! The old dragon's sharp claws streaked across the gigantic golden shield, leaving white marks and letting out an ear-piercing sound. When they heard that sound, all the living beings of the myriad races revealed pained expressions and covered their ears. Right then, the old dragon reared his head and roared into the skies. Roar! Although the dragon roar was extremely old, it still contained a terrifying power of sound that shook the world and reverberated endlessly. Thankfully, the living beings of the myriad races covered their ears in advance. Otherwise, the dragon roar would have injured many living beings. World-howling Shenhuang frowned and felt an unbearable pain in his ears. Blood was flowing out. The divine blood in his body boiled and surged violently. It quickly suppressed the pain and stopped the bleeding. Slay! World-howling Shenhuang summoned a gigantic golden sword and slashed casually. An extremely terrifying divine power burst forth and slashed towards the old dragon's neck. Although the old dragon's body was thousands of feet long, and its strength was terrifying. However, with such a massive body, its agility was definitely lacking. It was impossible for the old dragon to dodge the slash completely. The old dragon's expression was calm. He moved his dragon head slightly, and the pair of dragon horns on his head blocked the golden sword. Clang! The golden greatsword stood on top of the dragon horn. Not only did it fail to cut into the dragon horn, it even bounced up high. Xiao Shi Shenhuang's perlicue was torn apart, dripping with blood. He almost couldn't hold on to the golden greatsword, and it flew out of his hands. A beam of divine light shot out from the old dragon's eyes, attacking world-howling Shenhuang. Eye technique. When the old dragon released this eye technique, it contained a powerful divine ability. It pierced through the void and arrived in an instant. Divine Eye. Xiao Shenhuang reacted extremely quickly. 2 rays of golden light shot out from his eyes. It was extremely dazzling, clashing with the old dragon's eye technique. The 2 ocular techniques collided, and a brilliant halo burst forth in midair, spreading in all directions and enveloping the entire battlefield, almost drowning Xiao Shenhuang's figure. Even the upper half of the old dragon's body was faintly discernible, as it moved through the brilliant halo. Boom! 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 The sounds of the two emperors colliding rang out continuously, and the void was riddled with holes against their powers. The living beings of the 10,000 races watched in awe. Some cultivators might not even be able to witness a battle between emperors in their entire lives. Bang! Before long, a figure darted out of the halo and fell to the ground once more. It was Xiao Shenhuang. Xiao Shenhuang was suppressed by the old dragon of Enigma Palace once more. This time round, Xiao Shenhuang was already in a wretched state when he stood up again. He panted heavily and was covered in wounds. The arrogance and disdain he had just now when he arrived at Enigma Palace no longer existed on his face. He no longer had the peerless demeanor of an emperor either. This senior dragons must have comprehended more than one peerless divine ability, the red-headed ghost murmured softly. Many ancestral dragons nodded. Xiao Shenhuang had comprehended a peerless divine ability and became an emperor. However, his combat strength was equivalent to a human emperor who had comprehended 3 peerless divine abilities. If the old dragon of Enigma Palace had comprehended 2 peerless divine abilities, his combat strength would be equivalent to a human emperor who had comprehended 4 peerless divine abilities. Back then, the Buddha, Thunder and Saber emperors of the human race only comprehended 3 peerless divine abilities. However, those human emperors were extremely talented. Although they only comprehended 3 peerless divine abilities, they could suppress ordinary emperors of the primordial races with their powerful trump cards. Although the old dragon of Enigma Palace was old and nearing the end of his lifespan, he was able to defeat Xiao Shenhuang so badly because he had comprehended another peerless divine ability. If the old dragon of Enigma Palace was at his peak, he might have killed Xiao Shenhuang in this short period of time. Old thing. Xiao Shenhuang's expression was terrible as he said hatefully, "Do you think that you can stop the birth of the primordial 6 races with just you?" "Of course I can't stop them," the old dragon said indifferently. "It's not just me. Enigma Palace and the cultivation world have never thought of stopping the primordial 6 races from being born either." "What do you mean?" Xiao Shenhuang asked. "The reason why Enigma Palace convened the convention of the 10,000 races this time round is actually to negotiate with the primordial races," the old dragon of Enigma Palace said. "From now on, the 10,000 races will coexist in Tianhuang mainland. The primordial races will not have to stay in a corner and hide in a forbidden ground. You can walk out completely. However, the primordial races have to guarantee that you won't invade the territory of the human cultivation world without permission. A war between both sides will not benefit anyone. It will only cause the living beings of Tianhuang mainland to be plunged into misery, and blood will flow like rivers. I wonder how many races will wither and decline." In the primordial war and the ancient war, countless races were wiped out. There were even more races that withered. Xiao Shenhuang fell silent. The old dragon of Enigma Palace continued, "If a war breaks out between the primordial races and the human race once more, both sides will only suffer losses. At that time, other living beings will rise in Tianhuang mainland. At that time, the primordial races and humans will be suppressed mercilessly." Long Huang Jinshin praised internally. The old dragon of Enigma Palace was a true wise man with foresight. He did not know the truth of the primordial war, nor did he know that there was indeed another massive faction coveting Tianhuang mainland and could invade at any moment. However, he had predicted the possible danger. If this war broke out and both sides suffered losses, Tianhuang mainland would definitely be ruled by the Protoss when God mainland invaded. Be it the primordial races, humans or living beings of the 10,000 races, they would all be suppressed by the Protoss. They would become the billions of slaves kneeling on the ground with dazed, pious expressions beneath the pyramid of the Protoss. The old dragon of Enigma Palace had put in a lot of effort into his words. Unfortunately, he chose the wrong person. Xiao Shenhuang was the Protoss. He wanted to see a war break out between both sides, and the human race and the primordial races suffer losses. Only then would God mainland have a chance to invade. Fufu. Right then, a mocking voice sounded. What right does the human race have to suffer losses with the primordial 6 races? Chapter 1630. Those words were not said by Xiaoshi Shenhuang, but by someone else. The old dragon of Enigma Palace stared at the void not far away with a solemn expression. The void split open, and a tall man in a scarlet gold Taoist robe walked out. His golden hair fell to his shoulders, and his blue eyes were as bright as gems. This man was extremely handsome, and had a faint halo behind him. Just by standing in midair with his hands behind his back, the living beings of all races wanted to bow down and worship him. This was an almost perfect man. What was even more terrifying was that the aura emanating from this man was far inferior to that of Xiaoshi Shenhuang and the old man of Enigma Palace. Protoss Heavenly Shenhuang. Greetings, Heavenly Shenhuang. Many Protoss knelt and kowtowed, shouting in unison. Even an expert like Xiaoshi Shenhuang knelt on one knee. 1T, ict, 1T/ict. The living beings of all races were shocked. Unable to withstand the pressure, they knelt down one after another. Sister, who is this person? What a terrifying aura. Carefree sent a voice transmission secretly with a terrified expression. I can't even move a finger in front of this person. This is Heavenly Shenhuang. Yinlan sent a voice transmission with her divine consciousness. He should be the strongest person in this generation of the Protoss. Furthermore, it's very likely that he's the strongest Protoss in history. I heard that he comprehended 4 supreme divine powers. The gods had comprehended 4 supreme divine abilities, and their combat power was equivalent to the human sovereigns comprehending 6 supreme divine abilities. What did that mean? Back then, the eternal human emperor had only comprehended 6 peerless divine abilities. This was a terrifying existence equivalent to the human emperor. 1T, ict, 1T/ict. Carefree was secretly speechless and hurriedly asked, Sister, has the strongest emperor of the Kuan race comprehended 4 supreme divine powers? No, Yinlan said. As far as I know, the strongest emperor of the Kuan race only comprehended 3 supreme divine powers. Carefree said with some disappointment. Not a single one? Do you think it's so easy to comprehend an exceptional divine ability? Yinlan said. A monster like Tian Shenhuang is as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns since ancient times. Do you know why I'm not optimistic about the fate of your master and the human race? Yinlan asked again. Why? Carefree asked. Yinlan said. That's because in this generation, apart from Tian Shenhuang, there are 2 other terrifying emperors of the primordial 6 races who have comprehended 4 supreme divine powers. They are the Golden Crow Fire Emperor of the Golden Crow clan and the Dark Witch Emperor of the Sorcerer clan. In this generation, the rise of the primordial races is the general trend. No one can stop it. Even if a peerless expert like the eternal human emperor was born in the human race, he might not be able to resolve this crisis. Carefree was shocked and asked, Doesn't that mean that the 3 primordial races are all stronger than the Kuan race? Exactly, Yinlan said. That's why the race has yet to express their stance and stand on the side of the human race. Furthermore, the clan leader has instructed repeatedly that you can come, but you must not expose your identity and bloodline. The 3 top emperors are all on the side of the primordial 6 races, Carefree said worriedly. Doesn't that mean that Master and the others don't have any chance? Of course there's still a chance. However, it's very slim, Yinlan said. Unless your Master's 2 true bodies and that taboo god? What the F***ck? What the F***ck? However, that's too difficult. The primordial 6 races won't give your Master too much time. Carefree fell silent. Yinlan continued. With Tian Shenhuang's arrival, it's hard to say if your Master can survive today. I reckon that the emperors of the other primordial races should be nearby, and will appear soon. Brother Tian Shenhuang. To think that you would arrive first. At this moment, another part of the void split open, and a figure walked out. The figure was extremely burly. Although he had transformed into a human, he still had a green face and fangs. He was extremely ugly. Wind Fiend Rakshasa Emperor. With the Rakshasa clan leader as the lead, many Rakshasa clansmen knelt on the ground and shouted excitedly. 1T, Icht, 1T/Icht, the emperor of the Rakshasa race had arrived. Arriving before Tian Shenhuang, the Wind Fiend Rakshasa emperor cupped his fists and took the initiative to greet with a smile. Although they were both emperors, the Wind Fiend Rakshasa emperor was clearly inferior to Tian Shenhuang. Tian Shenhuang nodded slightly to the Wind Fiend Rakshasa emperor. Suddenly, as though he sensed something, his gaze shifted and he smiled. "Since you're already here, why don't you come out and meet me, Brother Wu?" Suddenly, a figure appeared where Tian Shenhuang's gaze landed. The cultivator looked middle-aged and wore dark green robes. His ghostly green eyes were extremely striking against his pale face. This pair of dark green eyes seemed to be exuding a strange kind of magic. Many cultivators merely stared at those eyes for a moment before their gazes froze, as though they had lost their souls. 1T/Icht, 1T/Icht. Among the Kuan race, even Carefree widened his eyes and glared at the eyes of the witch cultivator instinctively. It was as though everything and all living beings had vanished from his vision. The only thing left in his mind was that pair of ghostly green eyes. Carefree watched helplessly as the pair of eyes closed in on him, as though they were about to barge into his consciousness. Even though he knew that something was amiss, he could not control it. "Don't look." Suddenly, a soft holler sounded in Carefree's ears. Someone shook his body. Carefree shuddered and closed his eyes hurriedly without hesitation. After calming himself down, Carefree opened his eyes once more. He did not dare to raise his head to look at the witch cultivator again, and merely scanned his surroundings. Carefree was shocked by what he saw. In that short period of time, many living beings among the 10,000 races stood on the spot motionlessly in a daze. Although there were no injuries on the surface, there were no signs of life in their bodies. Among those living beings, there were even ancestor realm experts. All of them were dead, in the span of a few breaths. "What's going on?" Carefree asked instinctively with a pale face. Lan said in a deep voice, "That's the Underworld Witch Emperor." Those living beings did not know how powerful the Underworld Witch Emperor was, and even dared to stare at his eyes. Their souls were hooked out by the Underworld Witch Emperor and they're all dead. Carefree's heart skipped a beat, and he felt a lingering fear. Just now, if not for Lan's reminder, he would have been reduced to a corpse like those living beings. Even if he possessed a taboo bloodline, it was useless. It was only at this moment that Carefree truly understood how terrifying those top emperors were. Even though he was a taboo bloodline, he was still like an ant in the eyes of those powerful emperors before he grew up, and could be killed casually. No one noticed that just as Carefree escaped the calamity and woke up, the Underworld Witch Emperor in midair frowned slightly, and a green glint flashed through his eyes. The Underworld Witch Emperor looked at Carefree meaningfully, and did not say anything. End of chapter. Chapter 1631. Right then, the living beings of the 10,000 races had yet to recover from the sinister fear brought about by the Underworld Witch Emperor when they suddenly felt a wave of heat. Hot, way too hot. It felt as though everyone was in a gigantic furnace and could not break free. The temperature of the living beings of the 10,000 races rose suddenly, and some of the living beings with lower cultivation realms fainted on the spot. The other living beings were drenched in sweat as well. That was despite the isolation of Enigma Palace with many restrictions and formations. Outside Enigma Palace, the massive Heaven Evolution mountain range was already engulfed in flames. The mountains collapsed and the ground cracked as endless lava spewed out from the ground, as though the apocalypse had arrived. Outside Enigma Palace, it had almost turned into a scorching world of lava that wanted to refine all living beings. Many cultivators raised their heads instinctively and saw two suns hanging in the firmaments. The light they emitted was equal. A figure walked out slowly from the second sun and emitted a powerful might that was not weaker than Shenhuang and the Underworld Witch Emperor. The Golden Crow Fire Emperor had arrived. Long Ran had a grim expression, and the dragons were shocked as well. The three strongest emperors of the primordial races of the current era had all descended into Enigma Palace, and they felt immense pressure. In fact, many dragons even had thoughts of retreating. The auras emitted by the three emperors were way too terrifying. Despite being ancestral dragons, they did not even have the courage to attack against such an aura. Many cultivators were in despair. It was only at this moment that they truly understood why the emperors of the human race did not appear and avoided meeting them. Against such experts, any human emperor that descended would be suppressed mercilessly. Many emperors had already cultivated to this realm, and were only a step away from ascending to the heavens. Who would give up their lives for nothing? Even the old dragon of Enigma Palace had a look of worry in his eyes as he sighed internally. Even if he was at his peak, he would not be able to defend against Shen Huang and the others, let alone the fact that he was already old. There was no solution. This was a dead end. Fufu, fellow Taoists, you're really early. I was prepared to wait and see what other trump cards the human race has. A white-robed man walked over slowly. His face was ruddy, and he was handsome. He looked even more elegant than most of the human cultivators present. However, many experts from the primordial races knew that this was a ruthless person who killed without batting an eyelid. Bloodvine race, Blood Emperor. Almost all of the Bloodvine race were filled with blood chi after transforming into human form. However, this Blood Emperor did not emit any blood chi. He looked just like an ordinary cultivator. But the more it was like this, the more terrifying the Blood Emperor was. I'm here too. On the other side, a man in a black robe walked over. His eyes were clear, but it was the black vertical eye at the center of his forehead that caused the hearts of all living beings to tremble. This bloody scar emitted a destructive aura. Everywhere it passed, the void trembled and heaven and earth were shocked. Sky Eye Clan, Black Pupil Emperor. The top emperors of the primordial 6 races had all descended. Under normal circumstances, the Wind Fiend Rakshasa Emperor, Blood Emperor and Black Pupil Emperor had each comprehended 3 supreme divine powers, and their combat strength was equivalent to 5 supreme divine powers of the human emperors. Those 3 emperors were already at the peak of Tianhuang mainland, and were enough to sweep through everything and suppress all races. However, because of the appearance of the Shen Huang, Underworld Witch Emperor and Golden Crow Fire Emperor, the brilliance of the 3 emperors dimmed slightly. With the appearance of the 6 emperors, even the auras of the Kuan, dragons and barbarians were completely suppressed, let alone the cultivators present. The 6 emperors shifted their gazes and surveyed their surroundings. They paused for a moment on the creation Qinglian, before looking at the dragon phoenix true body. The expressions of the 6 emperors did not change, and they did not attack either. However, there was a hint of disdain and mockery in their eyes. Su Zimo's 2 true bodies were the creation Qinglian and the taboo dragon phoenix with limitless potential. However, in the eyes of the 6 emperors, they posed no threat at all. As long as they wanted to, they could kill the 2 true bodies of Su Zimo at any time. A single finger was enough. To put it simply, even the old dragon of Enigma Palace was nothing in the eyes of the 6 emperors. I'm truly old. The old dragon of Enigma Palace sighed. Although he was much older than the 6 martial emperors, any one of them could easily suppress him if they stepped forward. Old thing, you're meddling too much, the Shen Huang said indifferently. Since you want to die earlier, I'll send you on your way. The moment he said that, the Shen Huang suddenly extended a finger. The finger shone with an endless divine light and expanded rapidly, suppressing the old dragon of Enigma Palace like a divine pillar that connected the heavens. Boom! The old dragon of Enigma Palace leaped into the air and collided heavily against the heavenly pillar with a deafening bang. Snap! The horns on the head of the old dragon of Enigma Palace snapped instantly. The old dragon shuddered and his eyes were filled with deep pain. However, he did not make a single sound. The pair of dragon horns were like the 3rd legs of the Golden Crow race and the Heavenly Eye race. It was extremely difficult to heal once they were broken. Given his age, there was no way he could recover from such a severe injury. The old dragon of Enigma Palace seemed to have aged significantly after the impact. However, the power of the Shen Huang did not stop and seemed endless. Boom! Right in front of everyone, the 1,000-feet-long body of the old dragon of Enigma Palace was suppressed heavily and fell to the ground. That was truly a single finger of the Shen Huang. However, That finger pinned the old dragon of Enigma Palace to the ground. No matter how he struggled, he could not break free. All the races fell silent. The faces of the cultivators were as pale as ash. That was the power of the Shenhuang. If the palm of the Shenhuang were to land, the entire Enigma Palace would be reduced to ruins, let alone the living beings and cultivators present. Cough, cough. At this moment, an old and hoarse coughing sound rang out. Above Enigma Palace, an old man with one foot in the grave walked over slowly with a hunched back and a broom in his hand, as though he was about to run out of oil at any moment. The appearance of the old man was so sudden that the living beings of the 10,000 races did not sense anything. However, the eyes of the primordial 6 races, including the Shenhuang, narrowed with stern expressions. Let go. The old man raised the broom in his hand and swept it towards the bedazzling finger of the Shenhuang that shone with a resplendent divine light, saying softly, "Boom." That gentle sweep caused the Shenhuang's body to shudder, and the divine light on his finger trembled before dispersing rapidly. He retracted his finger instinctively as well. "Senior, you're here." The dragon phoenix true body bowed hurriedly. This senior was none other than the old man, who was sweeping the tombs in the depths of the ancestral dragon land. "Greetings, Emperor Qianlong." When Long Ran and the others saw this old man, they all showed a look of respect. They bowed their heads and saluted him, shouting loudly. Chapter 1632. Emperor Qianlong. Xiaoyao asked, "How is Emperor Qianlong compared to Tian Shenhuang and the others?" Yinlan said, "As far as I know, Emperor Qianlong is on the same level as Tian Shenhuang, Underworld Witch Emperor, and Golden Crow Fire Emperor. They have all comprehended 4 divine powers, and their combat power is equal to 6 divine powers. However, as you can see, Emperor Qianlong is old. He is no longer at his peak. He is definitely no match for Tian Shenhuang and the others." Xiaoyao's hope was dashed again. He said, "Even if Emperor Qianlong comes, it's useless. Emperor Qianlong won't be a match for the 6 emperors." Yinlan said, "Be that as it may, Emperor Qianlong has comprehended 4 divine powers. Even if the 6 divine powers work together, they will have to pay a high price to kill him. They are only one step away from reaching the top. If they fail the heavenly tribulation because of their injuries, they will lose more than they gain. Therefore, I guess Tian Shenhuang and the others are also afraid of Emperor Qianlong." Emperor Qianlong came to the side of Enigma Palace's old dragon while Xiaoyao and Xiaoyao were talking. He pointed his finger, and a divine power entered Enigma Palace's old dragon's body. The old dragon's injuries were temporarily healed. He turned into his human form and looked much taller than Emperor Qianlong. However, both of them had white hair and white hair. Their faces were full of wrinkles. They looked at each other with complicated expressions. "You are here?" Enigma Palace's old dragon said. Emperor Qianlong nodded and said, "We haven't seen each other for many years. At this age, let's forget about the past." All the living beings of the myriad races were dumbfounded. Even the dragon phoenix real body was shocked. Ancestral dragons lived 4 times longer than human divine powers. Emperor Qianlong was almost 400,000 years old. Enigma Palace's old dragon was from the same era as Emperor Qianlong. Moreover, there were some grudges between the two of them. It was possible that Enigma Palace's old dragon had left Dragonbone Valley for many years because of the grudges between them. Enigma Palace's old dragon smiled and said, "We are old men who are about to die. There is no need to talk about grudges." The 2 old men looked at each other and smiled. The grudges of the past disappeared like smoke in an instant. Apart from the 2 of them, no one else would know about this grudge. "Emperor Qianlong, you're already so old. Why are you here instead of staying in the Dragonbone Valley?" The Golden Crow Fire Emperor chuckled with a mocking tone. "Since all of you juniors have shown up, I naturally couldn't wait any longer. So, I decided to come over and get some exercise." Emperor Qianlong said. "Stop beating around the bush." The Wind Fiend Rakshasa Emperor smiled coldly and said, "Let's get straight to the point between us. You dragons, are you determined to interfere in this matter battle?" "Long, what's so bad?" Instead of answering, Emperor Qianlong asked, Haven't you learned enough from the immemorial and ancient war? Humph, God Emperor Tian said with murderous intent. Old Chun, you are already old. Even if we fight one-on-one, you are no match for me. If the 6 of us join forces, we can kill you. Emperor Qianlong nodded and said, You are right. I am old. I might not be able to defeat you one-on-one. Emperor Qianlong paused and looked up. 2 rays of light shot out from his eyes and he said, However, if I fight with my life on the line, I will definitely be able to injure 1 or 2 of you. Which one of you doesn't want to ascend? Why don't you do it now? Underworld Witch Emperor, Golden Crow Fire Emperor, and the others did not say anything, but they were wary. Emperor Qianlong had lived for almost 400,000 years. No one knew what kind of powerful trump cards he had. A centipede would not fall over even if it was dead. Moreover, Emperor Qianlong was still alive. He was a top emperor who was no weaker than them. Emperor Man, Emperor Kuan, come out. Right at this moment, the underworld shaman emperor suddenly said, We've already come to this point, so why hide at the side? There was a moment of silence. The void in the sky cracked open, and 2 figures walked out. One of them was as tall as a mountain. He was bare-chested and his limbs were huge. He exuded an ancient aura. Emperor Man had arrived. On the other side was a beautiful woman with black hair and a black robe. Although she was a woman, this beautiful woman's body faintly emitted an extremely terrifying and vast qi and blood. She was full of vitality. The barbarian tribe had the best physical body among the primordial 9 races. The Kuan tribe had the best physical body among the primordial 9 races. Their lifespan was longer than that of the dragons. An ancestor Kuan had a lifespan of 500,000 years. Emperor Kuan had arrived. By then, the top emperors of the primordial 9 races had gathered at Enigma Palace. Such a grand formation had never been seen since the Antiquity War. Emperor Man, Emperor Kuan, what do you think? Underworld Witch Emperor asked. Do you want to join forces with the dragons to fight against the primordial 6 races? Emperor Man and Emperor Kuan looked at each other and shook their heads. In that case, you guys want to join forces with the primordial 6 races? The Blood Emperor smiled and stretched out his arms. The primordial 9 races have always existed together. Welcome to join us. The Emperor Man and Emperor Kuan shook their heads again. The expressions of Tian Shenhuang and the others darkened. Eventually, the Emperor Man was the first to speak and said cautiously, This matter is a little complicated. We'll have to wait a little longer. What are we waiting for? What's there to wait for? The Golden Crow Fire Emperor could not help but holler. We're waiting for the truth. Emperor Kuan said slowly. What truth? Underworld Witch Emperor and the others frowned. The truth about the primordial war. Emperor Kuan said sternly. Tian Shenhuang frowned and killing intent surged in his eyes. He retracted it quickly and said expressionlessly. Everyone knows what happened during the primordial war. What truth can there be? That's right. Blood Emperor smiled as well. Speaking of the primordial war, when we faced the taboo god, Pleiades, Mujilaimu, Ichang Emoyu Jatsung, Qinli, Jigo Shao, why are you hesitating when facing a bunch of ants from the human race today? Hearing this, Night Spirit's eyes flashed with anger, and he clenched his fists slightly. Emperor Qianlong suddenly said, I remember that we were part of the primordial 8 races back then, right? The Protoss only rose to power after the primordial war. Tian Shenhuang's face turned cold. What does that have to do with anything? The Golden Crow Fire Emperor was confused. At that moment, the creation Qinglian behind Emperor Qianlong swayed gently and emitted rays of light. Su Zimo opened his eyes and stood up. The creation Qinglian turned into rays of light and entered his body. Let me tell you the truth about the primordial war. Su Zimo enunciated each word clearly. Chapter 1633. Heh! Godly Emperor Tian smiled disdainfully. His eyes flashed fiercely as he said coldly, You're not even 1,000 years old. What do you know about the immemorial war? I think you're just trying to mislead us. Before he could finish his sentence, Tian Shenhuang's eyes shot out 2 beams of divine light. The power of his eye technique was too fast. It arrived in an instant. Although Su Zimo was in the Mahayana realm, and had the glowing eye, he would not be able to block Tian Shenhuang's eye technique. The power of the divine powers contained within that visual technique could even kill the old dragon of Enigma Palace right away. Whoosh! But just as the power of the eye technique was about to hit Su Zimo, two beams of fiery light shot out and collided with the two beams of divine light. Boom! There was a loud explosion. Emperor Qianlong made his move and used his eye technique to block Tian Shenhuang's eye technique. Emperor Qianlong's body was hunched over, and he looked skinny. But when he stood in front of Su Zimo, he managed to block the power of the two eye techniques. Tian Shenhuang, you're too impatient. Emperor Qianlong shielded Su Zimo behind him and said, he hasn't said anything yet. Why is he trying to mislead us? The cultivators present, especially the emperors, had lived for so long but they were still blind. Even if Emperor Qianlong did not say anything, Emperor Mingwu and the others could tell that Tian Shenhuang's actions were strange. The divine emperor calmed down before long and said coldly, Desolate Marshal killed so many clansmen of the primordial 6 races. He should have died long ago. Is that so? Emperor Qianlong looked at Emperor Mingwu and the others and said, I think we should listen to what he has to say. What do you think? The Blood Emperor said, Desolate Marshal was killed by the primordial 6 races. We have to kill him with the kill order. In that case, there's no need to rush. I'd like to see what he has to say. Humph. Shenhuang sneered and said, A little brat who is still wet behind the ears. He's just spouting nonsense and spouting nonsense. What can he say? This old thing just wants to protect him and stall for time. Blood Emperor, have you forgotten that so many people from your Bloodvine tribe have died? 2 young lords were killed by this kid? Shenhuang said coldly. With such deep hatred, why do you still want to listen to what he has to say? The Blood Emperor's face sank. This matter had indeed caused the Bloodvine race to suffer a considerable blow, and they lost all face. The Golden Crow Fire Emperor also said with killing intent, That's right, why listen to his nonsense? Do we rulers have to listen to a little brat spouting nonsense here? Heavens, Shenhuang, what are you afraid of? Emperor Qianlong asked with a faint smile. What am I afraid of? Tian Shenhuang's expression changed slightly, and he shouted, I've comprehended for peerless skills. Even if the human emperor of all eternity descends, I can still fight him. The barbarian emperor, Emperor Kuan, and the rest looked on coldly. Although Tian Shenhuang looked fearless, he was already feeling a little guilty. The underworld witch emperor suddenly said, There's no need to rush to kill this kid. Why don't we listen to what he has to say? If he really dares to spout nonsense, I'll be the first to devour his soul. Among the 6 rulers, the underworld witch emperor's words carried the most weight. Tian Shenhuang snorted, but he did not refute. Emperor Qianlong nodded at Su Zimo, indicating for him to continue. Su Zimo said loudly, I'm sure all of you know that in the primordial age, there were only the primordial 8 tribes, and there were no Protoss. Not long after the appearance of the Protoss, the primordial war broke out. Upon hearing this, Shenhuang sneered. What? Are you going to say that the Protoss was the one who started the primordial war? That's the truth. Su Zimo said. Ha ha ha. Before he finished his sentence, laughter sounded from the primordial 6 races. That's your so-called truth? The underworld witch emperor's expression turned cold as well. The wind demon Rakshasa emperor shook his head. Araki Takashi. Oh, Araki Takashi. Do you think you can sow discord between the primordial 6 races with those petty tricks of yours? Do you think that we've lived our lives for nothing? Indeed, you guys have lived for nothing. Su Zimo said mercilessly. You guys don't even know how your ancestors died after living for so long, and you're still laughing heartlessly here. The laughter came to a halt. The living beings of the 10,000 races felt their scalps tingle. Who were these people present? They were the top rulers of Tianhuang mainland. To think that Su Zimo would dare to say such things to these rulers. Araki Takashi, I think you're really tired of living. The Blood Emperor said coldly. I don't want to hear anything else from you. I'm going to kill you right now. Su Zimo ignored the Blood Emperor's threat and continued. Have you guys ever wondered why the weapons of the Protoss are different from all the dermic weapons and dermic treasures on Tianhuang mainland? Why the patriarch of the Protoss wore a storage ring and not a storage bag on his finger. Why are all the cultivation techniques and secret skills of the Protoss unable to be cultivated by other races? Why are all the words of the Protoss completely different from the words of Tianhuang mainland? With each question, the murderous intent in deity Emperor Tian's eyes grew stronger. The underworld witch Emperor and the others frowned in deep thought as well. Finally, Su Zimo asked again, "Have you guys ever wondered where the Protoss came from, since Tianhuang mainland was originally one of the primordial 8 races?" The living beings of the 10,000 races present were confused, and many of the primordial races fell into deep thought. Shen Huang's gaze was dark as he said coldly, "The Protoss has our own words and cultivation techniques. What's wrong with that?" It was not only the Protoss. All the primordial races present had their own words. That did not seem to prove anything. "What are you trying to say?" the underworld witch Emperor asked in a deep voice. Su Zimo pointed at Shen Huang and said slowly, "The Protoss is an external civilization from the mainland of gods that is on par with Tianhuang mainland. The primordial war was started by the Protoss instigating a war between the 3 taboos and causing chaos on Tianhuang mainland, so that the mainland of gods could invade and occupy Tianhuang mainland to rule over the 10,000 races." The moment he said that, the massive Enigma Palace fell into a dead silence. The truth that Su Zimo said was way too shocking. It was completely beyond the imagination of the living beings of the 10,000 races, and they could not accept it for a moment. The underworld witch Emperor and the others were silent, and no emotions could be seen on their faces. This truth had completely overturned their understanding. They could not believe Su Zimo's words. "Piak! Piak! 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 Piak!" Shen Huang smiled and clapped, nodding slightly. "How fascinating. I've underestimated you by saying that you're spouting nonsense. You should be considered as having a glib tongue. For you to say such a ridiculous truth, it's quite impressive. I can't help but sigh in admiration when I hear it." Shen Huang said, "In my opinion, the primordial war should be a scheme of the human race. That's because the humans were the ones who ruled Tianhuang mainland after the primordial war, not us Protoss." When they heard that, the living beings of the 10,000 races nodded secretly. It's precisely because of the primordial war that the primordial 9 races were severely injured, that the humans were able to seize the opportunity to rise. In terms of benefits, the humans should be the ones who benefited in the end. A series of discussions sounded from the surroundings. Chapter 1634. Araki Takashi, you think you can sow discord between the primordial 6 races and slander us Protoss with just a few words? You're way too naive. Shen Huang had a mocking expression. Although he looked relaxed on the surface, the killing intent in his heart was almost gushing out. What Su Zimo said was the greatest secret of the Protoss. All these years, the Protoss had been careful and never dared to expose this secret. Among the Protoss, only the ancestor gods could come into contact with this matter. Back then, there were 2 gods on Kunlun Mountain? Tuji Wu? Apologize. Tuji. Huanji. Or was it because of one of the gods? Tuji. Chaotic Cherry Blossom? Huanhuanling? Qianzhangxi? Tuji Wu? Qianyu? Yingdong? No. Tuji. Tuji Jian? Right now, most of the Protoss bloodlines were descendants of this Protoss ancestor. However, it was this group of ancestors who lobbied among the primordial 8 races and used a combination technique to bewitch the primordial 8 races into joining forces and attacking Kunlun Mountain with the other 2 taboos as leaders. On the other side, this group of Protoss informed the mainland of God to invade Tianhuang mainland. The primordial war erupted completely. Later on, after the primordial war ended, the 3 taboos who truly knew the truth died one after another. This group of Protoss secretly rescued some of the Protoss who survived the primordial war and established a foothold on Tianhuang mainland, gradually developing into the 9th primordial race. This group of Protoss did not have many weapons, storage rings and other treasures that belonged to the mainland of God. Therefore, generally speaking, Only the ancestor gods were qualified to use the weapons of the mainland of God and know the secret of the Protoss. Godly Emperor Tian didn't expect that after so many years, this secret that had been covered in dust would be revealed by a junior of the human race. At that moment, even the eyes of the Protoss patriarch flashed with a hint of panic, and his expression turned ugly. However, Shen Huang could still maintain his composure. He was an emperor. Furthermore, he was the strongest emperor of the Protoss. He believed that his methods were sufficient to deal with this human junior. More importantly, that was something from the primordial era. It was truly too long ago. Even if this human junior somehow found out the truth, there was no evidence, and no one would believe him. After so many years, they had already integrated into Tianhuang region. How could they be shaken by the words of a junior? Araki Takashi, what evidence do you have? The barbarian emperor asked. Su Zimo said, the evidence is in the Kunlun ruins. Hearing this, deity Emperor Tian finally relaxed and let out a long sigh. Junior, are you toying with us? The Golden Crow Fire Emperor's eyes were filled with killing intent as he said coldly. The faces of the underworld Witch Emperor and the others darkened. Emperor Kun frowned and said, there's a divine ability forbidden zone in the Kunlun ruins. Any expert at the Mahayana realm or above will die if they step into it. If you say that the evidence is there, it's the same as not saying anything. Tian Shenhuang smiled. Everyone, you heard that, right? This is the so-called absurd truth. Do you still intend to continue listening? This junior is toying with us and trying to sow discord between the primordial 6 races. The underworld Witch Emperor and the others had cold and unfriendly expressions. They had lost their patience. Barbarian Emperor, Emperor Kun, can the two of you make a choice now? Tian Shenhuang smiled and asked. Well, the Barbarian Emperor and Emperor Kun hesitated. Su Zimo was not in a hurry and continued. Today the 10,000 races are gathered. I want to say 2 things. The truth of the primordial war is only one of them. The other thing. Su Zimo paused for a moment and took a deep breath before saying loudly, I want to be a taboo god? At that point, Night Spirit looked excited and clenched his fists instinctively. Writing my name? Tian Shenhuang looked around, and his gaze landed on Night Spirit not far away. He sneered, writing my name? It's just a bloodthirsty and cold-blooded race. Once it's born, it'll be a calamity for the 10,000 races and must be killed. Is Araki Takashi confused? The root of the primordial war is the taboo god? Alarms? Calamity of rainy continent? The cut of the jacket was pure imitation. Araki Takashi can't even protect himself, and he wants to be a god? Clang. A wave of voices sounded from the crowd. Some shook their heads while others sneered. Su Zimo said indifferently, it's fine if you guys don't dare to enter Kunlun ruins. I just returned from there. I can let you guys see the truth of the primordial war with your own eyes. As he said that, Su Zimo's fingers moved and conjured a hand seal. Streams of dermic powers shot out from his fingertips and entered the void above Enigma Palace. Catoptric deflection. Su Zimo shouted softly. Above Enigma Palace, a gigantic mirror appeared. It was like the surface of the water, sparkling with light. Catoptric deflection. This is a secret technique from the primordial era that has been lost for a long time. Emperor Kun exclaimed softly when he saw that. This secret technique could condense a water mirror, and through the refraction of light, it could reflect things hundreds of millions of miles away. This secret technique did not have any power, so it had been lost for a long time. Su Zimo obtained it in the ruins of Kunlun ruins, and spent a lot of time and effort to cultivate it. It was all for today. The living beings of the 10,000 races subconsciously looked up. Even the underworld Witch Emperor and the other experts of the primordial races raised their heads and looked at the water mirror in the sky. Through the water mirror, one could see an ancient and sorrowful ruin. One could see the dragon bones that were thousands of feet long, and the corpse of the 3-legged golden crow that had not decayed. This is Kunlun ruins. Many living beings quickly recognized that the water mirror was displaying the periphery of Kunlun ruins. Through the water mirror, many cultivators seemed to have arrived outside the Kunlun ruins and were in it. Su Zimo activated his essence spirit and channeled his technique. The scenery in the water mirror retreated continuously. The scene displayed in the water mirror had already entered Kunlun ruins and was rapidly going deeper. Not long after, the scene in the water mirror stabilized again. Through the water mirror, the living beings of the 10,000 races could see that it was a huge palace. It was dilapidated, and only the 4 walls were left standing. What's this? I don't know. Is this the so-called evidence? Look, there seems to be a picture on the walls of the palace. Someone pointed at the water mirror and exclaimed when he discovered something unusual. Many living beings focused their gazes on the pictures on the 4 walls of the palace and gradually fell into them. When the living beings of the 10,000 races saw the first picture, they were still confused. When they saw the second picture, a commotion gradually broke out in the crowd. Ah, there were actually 2 gods in the primordial era? Could there really be a continent of gods? Doubt and shock began to appear in the eyes of many living beings. When they saw the 3rd, 4th, and 5th picture, there was only shock in the eyes of the living beings of the 10,000 races. It was an extreme shock. Was this the truth of the primordial war? Many living beings widened their eyes and felt that it was difficult to breathe. When it came to the 7th and 8th picture, the taboo death, the entire Enigma Palace fell into silence once more. A faint sadness enveloped the sky above Enigma Palace. Through the 8 pictures, the living beings of the 10,000 races felt as though they were in the ancient times and witnessed the shocking battle with their own eyes. It was a period of sorrow. The 8 pictures seemed to have struck the depths of everyone's hearts and souls. Even some of the emperors present were greatly moved. There were only 8 words left in their minds. Back to Tianhuang, protect Kunlun. Chapter 1635. The living beings of the 10,000 races finally understood what Su Zimo had said just now. If that picture was true, then the living beings of the 10,000 races could be where they were today, because of the taboo god. Flattery? Neon licking the sword with his thumb. Taboo god. Constriction? Flattery? Making a fuss? Yes. And now time had passed. In this life, the taboo god, who had protected Tianhuang region and the 10,000 races? Constriction? Gu Huaijiang, sending the Mirage Qian Songjian Thumb Mound every race, wanted to kill them as soon as possible. What a joke. The Underworld Witch Emperor, the Golden Crow Fire Emperor, and the other emperors narrowed their eyes and looked at Shen Huang and the other Protoss with a hint of wariness. Emperor Kuan and Emperor Barbarian were already standing beside Emperor Qinlong, showing strong hostility to the Protoss. The ancestral gods' faces were a little pale, and they subconsciously looked at Shen Huang. Until now, Shen Huang was still able to remain calm and expressionless. It had to be said that Shen Huang was indeed extraordinary to be able to cultivate to such a level and become the most powerful emperor in history among the Protoss. At this moment he was also a little flustered. Indeed, Su Zimo's move was something he had not expected. However, he had a strong temperament and remained calm. Others could not tell whether he was happy or angry, nor could they tell what he was thinking. Among the 10,000 races that came today, how many living beings want to kill Night Spirit? Su Zimo looked around and asked in a deep voice. No one said anything. Before this, almost every living being did not want Night Spirit to live and wanted to kill him as soon as possible. However, at this moment, many living beings lowered their heads and felt guilty. It was no exaggeration to say that they could cultivate and survive on Tianhuang region today because of the taboo god in the primordial era. Otoyeniemo? Otoyeniemo? There was a taboo god? Otoalewa swayemo? Xiao? Emonaiemo? Shen Huang, what do you say? Underworld Witch Emperor asked. The heavenly god emperor chuckled. Who would believe such a lowly method? You want to slander me, the Protoss, with just 8 drawings? The Underworld Witch Emperor and the others remained silent. Just based on the 8 drawings, it was indeed not enough to prove anything. The Barbaric Emperor, Kuan Emperor, and most of the living beings had already confirmed that this was the truth of the primordial war. But that was not enough. Shen Huang sneered. If I, the Protoss, find an artist and spend some time, They can easily draw hundreds or thousands of such pictures. How could something like this be used as evidence? How laughable. It's all right. Su Zimo had a mocking look on his face as he said, I know that you will never admit it. Everyone, please continue watching. Su Zimo also laughed coldly. He activated his primordial spirit and changed his spell. The scene in the water mirror above the sky continued to move forward. Gradually, a long and huge canyon appeared in front of them. It was stained with blood, and corpses were everywhere. Ah, this canyon seems to be the canyon in the drawing just now. At the end of the canyon is the colorful cave in the drawing. Oh my God, there are so many corpses in the canyon. They all seem to be Protoss. Why are there so many Protoss corpses? Their flesh and blood are still there. It seems like they just died not long ago. Exclamations came from the crowd. Shen Huang's expression changed drastically. His pupils constricted violently as he stared at the Protoss corpses in the god-slaying canyon. His hands, which were hidden behind his back, were already clenched into fists and trembling slightly. He could naturally see that these Protoss had died not long ago. It had not even been 100 years. Veins appeared on Shen Huang's neck. It was obvious that his mind was in turmoil. Su Zimo said calmly, 80 years ago, the seal of Kunlun was weakened, and the godly mainland invaded again. The Night Spirit and I worked together to kill all these Protoss in the god-slaying canyon. Shen Huang's face darkened completely. He turned around and stared at Su Zimo, who was not far away. He did not hide the murderous intent in his heart. The people in the canyon were all his people. With so many of his people, if he could enter Infinite Region, he would be able to re-establish contact with the godly mainland and find an opportunity to rule Infinite Region. But now their identities and origins had been exposed, and these Protoss were all dead. At this moment, Shen Huang hated Su Zimo to the core. Emperor Chen Long's expression was grave as he stared at Shen Huang, ready to strike at any time. If you still don't believe me, take a look at these things. Su Zimo patted his storage bag and threw out a bunch of shiny golden weapons. They fell to the ground with a loud thud. These weapons were all golden greatswords, golden spears, and some golden shields. Storage rings. These were the divine weapons that only Protoss could wield. Only Protoss could wield these weapons. Su Zimo did not care about them at all. The Protoss's eyes were wide open, and their murderous intent was boiling. Araki Takeshi. Shen Huang gritted his teeth and said coldly, Good, very good. Swoosh. Suddenly, Shen Huang's body flashed and disappeared from where he was. Emperor Chen Long's expression changed. He activated his blood and qi, and a divine power was formed in his palm. He was ready to take on Shen Huang's next attack head-on. Shen Huang was enraged, and his attacks were like a storm. But soon Emperor Chen Long frowned. He realized that Shen Huang did not attack Su Zimo at all. Instead, he rushed to the other side. That was where Night Spirit was. Ah! The crowd exclaimed. Emperor Chen Long hesitated for a moment, but he did not step forward to stop him. He did not dare to leave Su Zimo's side. As long as he stepped forward to save Night Spirit, if Shen Huang suddenly changed his target to Su Zimo, it would be too late for regrets. In fact, that was Shen Huang's evil intention. Although Shen Huang was enraged, he did not lose his mind. He knew very well that it was almost impossible to kill Su Zimo with Emperor Chen Long's protection. But he could lure the tiger away from the mountain. If Shen Huang attacked Night Spirit, Su Zimo would be exposed if Emperor Chen Long stopped him. Then, he could take advantage of the opportunity to kill Su Zimo. If Emperor Chen Long did not do anything, he could take advantage of the opportunity to kill Taboo God. Lu. Is it because of its resistance to war that the Shangxiu is a humorous Shangxiu? Lu. With godly Emperor Tian's cultivation and battle prowess, if he wanted to kill someone, there were only 3 people present who could stop him. Emperor Chen Long did not dare to leave Su Zimo's side. Emperor Ming Wu and Emperor Golden Crow were expressionless. They lowered their eyes as if they did not see what was happening. Even if they knew the truth about the Archean War, they would not choose to save Night Spirit. After all, their ancestors had also participated in the Archean War. Who could guarantee that this taboo god, Lu, Lu. Lu. What if someone could kill a taboo god? Lu. 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 In other words, if Shen Huang attacked Night Spirit would definitely die. Chapter 1636. In the blink of an eye, Tian Shenhuang arrived in front of Night Spirit. It was too fast. Monkey and the rest were still in a daze. Tian Shenhuang reached out and grabbed Night Spirit's head, pulling Night Spirit up from the ground. Night Spirit could not resist Tian Shenhuang's powerful strength at all. Divine Emperor Tian turned to look at Su Zimo, who was not far away with a cold expression. Araki Takashi, Tian Shenhuang said coldly, "You killed my tribesmen, so I'll kill your brothers. I'll make you live in pain forever." Poof. Tian Shenhuang was decisive in killing, and was in a rage. He would not waste his breath on Su Zimo. He exerted strength in his palm, and crushed Night Spirit's head. Blood splattered. Night Spirit's headless corpse fell heavily to the ground. The eyes of Emperor Chen Long, Emperor Man, and Emperor Kuan flickered with a hint of pity. The living beings of the 10,000 races sighed as well. All of them, and all the living beings of Tianhuang mainland owed a taboo god? Huan Huan Huai. Unexpectedly the god of this generation? Huan Huai. Gu Huang Fu Sha Yulu. Po Huang Huai. Any living being with a conscience would feel guilty at this moment. The underworld Witch Emperor, Golden Crow Fire Emperor, and the others were expressionless. In their hearts, it was best that Night Spirit was killed by Tian Shenhuang. Otherwise the taboo god? Is this a boat made of sand and swan? Yun. Snatch this responsibility? Henceforth Huan Hei. Bo. Su Zimo looked at this scene, and did not stop it. There was no sadness in his eyes at all. Instead there was a hint of mockery. At this moment, Tian Shenhuang's expression changed slightly, as he looked at Night Spirit's corpse instinctively. Was there really a god in Night Spirit's body? Nah. Ai? Ding? To play with furthermore, when he crushed the Night Spirit's head, he did not detect the Night Spirit's primordial spirit. He had only crushed an extremely condensed strand of divine sense. Emperor Chen Long, Emperor Ming Wu, and the other emperors narrowed their eyes as they gradually noticed the abnormality. Wasn't this the taboo god? Annoyed at this moment, Su Zimo smiled and said, "Heavens, Shenhuang, I've disappointed you. What you just killed was just a clone that the Night Spirit condensed with a wisp of blood essence." Monkey and the others came to a sudden realization. They had long noticed that Night Spirit's situation was a bit strange. After not seeing him for 100 years, his battle strength had not increased by much. Furthermore, the strangest thing was that the Night Spirit did not transform into his true form from the beginning to the end. He only fought against the many primordial races in his human form. It was only now that Monkey and the rest realized that this was just a clone of Night Spirit. A wisp of blood essence, and a wisp of spirit consciousness, could not support the Night Spirit to transform into his true form. Su Zimo's gaze swept past the Emperor Ming Wu and the others as he said mockingly, "I was worried that someone would have ill intentions during the convention of 10,000 races, and did not want the Night Spirit to grow. Indeed, that's the case." Actually, Su Zimo did not want the Night Spirit to participate in the convention of 10,000 races in Kunlun ruins. He had 3 true bodies. The Dragon Phoenix true body was protected by dragons. Even in the worst-case scenario where both true bodies died, he still had Wu Dao's true body. However, the Night Spirit did not have any backing in the convention of 10,000 races. If an emperor were to appear and kill the Night Spirit, no one would be able to stop him. Later on, the Night Spirit thought of this idea, and sent a clone to follow Su Zimo. But now, the danger of the convention of 10,000 races was even more terrifying than Su Zimo had imagined. The top experts of Tianhuang mainland were gathered. Of course, what was even more terrifying was the human heart. Even if Su Zimo had told the truth about the immemorial war, as a taboo god? What kind of creature is this? Protect. Do you play with persimmon dumplings? Pomelo peduncle? The compassionate family is resolute, and resolute Su Zimo did not say anything else. He only looked at the underworld Witch Emperor and the Golden Crow Fire Emperor with a faint smile. The thoughts of the two rulers could not be hidden from him at all. The Underworld Witch Emperor and the Golden Crow Fire Emperor were expressionless. What kind of status did these two have? Even if Su Zimo saw through their thoughts, the two sovereigns didn't care at all. The Underworld Shaman Emperor also looked at Su Zimo, and a faint green light appeared in his eyes. This soul-stealing art was only one of the great abilities. However, he believed that Su Zimo would not be able to defend against it given that he had just entered the Mahayana realm. If Su Zimo continued to stare at him, his soul would be drawn out. Even if Emperor Qianlong was in front and could stop it in time, Su Zimo's primordial spirit would be severely injured. The Underworld Shaman Emperor wanted to teach Su Zimo a lesson. No one could provoke him, the Underworld Shaman Emperor. This Araki Takashi really doesn't want to live anymore. He actually dares to provoke the rulers and stare at the Underworld Shaman Emperor's eyes. Someone said, "Your master is going to be at a disadvantage." Yinlan suddenly transmitted her voice to Xiaoyao. Just as the Underworld Shaman Emperor was using the soul-stealing art, Su Zimo's eyes suddenly became as black as ink, emitting a dark and cold light. The serene fluorescent stone sensed danger, and the serene fluorescent eye activated automatically. If it was just the serene fluorescent eye, it would be very difficult to defend against the Underworld Shaman Emperor's great ability. However, Su Zimo's eyes still had a divine item like the serene fluorescent stone. Su Zimo and the Underworld Shaman Emperor stared at each other, and they were not at a disadvantage at all. Immediately after, the Underworld Shaman Emperor seemed to be frightened by something, and he subconsciously turned his head and dodged. Most of the living beings would not notice such a subtle movement, but Emperor Qianlong and the others saw it clearly. The serene fluorescent eye was a forbidden god? A forbidden god? A forbidden god? Even the heavenly eye of the heavenly eye race had to avoid it. When the Underworld Shaman Emperor saw this eye technique, the fear in his blood was suddenly awakened, and he subconsciously dodged. However, he calmed down quickly, and his face was a little pale. "Everyone, the situation is very clear now," Su Zimo said loudly. "The reason why the Protoss is in this generation, working with the Sorcerer race, Heavenly Eye race, and the other primordial 5 races to fight against the humans and dragons, is to deplete the strength of Tianhuang mainland, so that both of us will suffer great losses. This way, there will be no obstacles for the godly mainland to invade Tianhuang mainland." "I didn't." Shenhuang's expression changed as he hurriedly explained. "The reason why the 6 races joined forces this time round is to suppress the human race and rule Tianhuang mainland once more." "It's not, Fufu." Su Zimo sneered and interrupted. "Then how do you explain the invasion of the Kunlun ruins by the godly mainland a few decades ago? You've been plotting for a long time to sow discord between the primordial 8 races." "Nonsense." Shenhuang was enraged, and his lungs were about to explode. Actually, Su Zimo knew that the Kunlun ruins had the Kunlun barrier, and the godly mainland should not have contacted the Protoss of Tianhuang mainland yet. However, that did not matter. The continent of gods had invaded the Kunlun ruins 80 years ago, and now, the various primordial races were at daggers drawn and on the verge of breaking out. God Emperor Tian could not explain all these things together. The 5 emperors of the primordial races, the Underworld Shaman Emperor, the Golden Crow Fire Emperor, the Wind Demon Rakshasa Emperor, the Blood Emperor, and the Black Pupil Emperor gestured slightly and led the primordial races to retreat gradually, distancing themselves from the Protoss. In the blink of an eye, the Protoss was isolated in the middle of Enigma Palace. Chapter 1637. Underworld Witch Golden Crow. "What do you mean?" Tian Shenhuang frowned and asked in a deep voice. "Do you guys really believe what this junior said?" The Underworld Witch Emperor and the others were expressionless and indifferent. Tian Shenhuang took a deep breath and said, "The primordial war was caused by the ancestors of the Protoss. They are already old. They have indeed committed a grave mistake, but it has nothing to do with us. All these years, the Protoss has developed and strengthened in Tianhuang mainland, and has long regarded himself as a member of Tianhuang mainland. We've been friends for so many years. Could it be that we can't compare to a few words from this junior? You've never told us the truth in our years of friendship, the Golden Crow Fire Emperor said coldly. If not for today's incident, the primordial 5 races would have been kept in the dark. Hee hee. The underworld witch emperor chuckled strangely, and did not say anything. None of the emperors present were fools. Since they already knew the truth of the primordial war, and the origins of the Protoss, they were naturally wary of the Protoss. The Blood Emperor sneered as well. Tian Shenhuang, if the primordial races are embroiled in a chaotic war, and suffer great losses, will you still be brothers with us when God Mainland invades and occupies Tianhuang Mainland? In the blink of an eye, the situation of the convention of the 10,000 races underwent a shocking change. Initially, the primordial 6 races joined forces and were domineering. The human race almost had no way out. But now that Su Zimo had awakened and revealed the truth of the primordial war, the alliance of the primordial 6 races was disbanded, and the Protoss was isolated. Everyone, since that's the case, the primordial 8 races should join forces today to suppress the Protoss and take revenge for our ancestors of the primordial era. The barbarian race said loudly with a murderous aura. I agree. Emperor Kuan's expression was cold as well. The death of the Kuan Peng of the primordial era was actually plotted against by the Protoss. That infuriated Emperor Kuan. Emperor Kuan said, the Protoss is a huge hidden danger in Tianhuang Mainland. We should eliminate them as soon as possible to prevent future troubles. Emperor Qinlong did not say anything. Having lived for so long, he had a clearer understanding of the situation before him. He was very clear that even if he knew the truth behind the ancient war, things wouldn't be so simple because the human heart was complicated. The underworld wizard emperor smiled and said, that is indeed the case. Back then, the 2 great taboos of the primordial era, the dragon phoenix and the Kuan Peng, died tragically, and the main culprit was the Protoss. You dragons, the Kuan race, the barbarians, and the Star Dragon Emperor are enough to kill the Protoss. The barbarian emperor frowned. What do you mean? The underworld wizard emperor smiled and said, don't worry. If you kill the Protoss, the wizard race will definitely not help the Protoss. My Golden Crow clan will not step in either. The Golden Crow Fire Emperor added. The rulers of the Bloodvine clan, the Rakshasa clan, and the Heavenly Eye clan also expressed their opinions. It was easy to guess the plan of the 5 rulers. They wanted to stay out of it and let the dragons, the Kuan race, and the barbarians fight with the Protoss. It would be best if both sides were injured. The Kuan Emperor said, if the primordial 8 races work together, we can kill the Protoss at the lowest cost. What do you mean by this? The underworld wizard emperor waved his hand and said, after all, we were once allies with the Protoss. It is not moral to attack our allies in the blink of an eye. I can't help you with this matter. Shenhuang's face darkened. He knew very well that if it weren't for his strong battle power, which was a huge threat to the underworld wizard emperor and the others, the Protoss might have been destroyed today. The current situation had evolved into one where the dragons, the Kuan race, and the barbarians were on one side. The wizard race, the Golden Crow clan, the Bloodvine clan, the Heavenly Eye clan, and the Rakshasa clan were on the other side. The Protoss was isolated. The 3 factions were wary of each other, and no one was willing to make a move. If the dragons, the Kuan race, and the barbarians worked together, there was a high chance that they could destroy the Protoss. However, the 3 races would definitely suffer great losses in this battle. Given Emperor Qinlong's lifespan, he might die on the spot. At that time, who would be able to protect the dragon phoenix of this generation? The wizard race and the other primordial 5 races were wary of Shenhuang, and naturally would not make a move easily. It was best to reap the benefits. As for the Protoss, he would not be foolish enough to take the initiative to challenge the primordial 8 races. There was a subtle balance between the 3 factions. Emperor Qinlong coughed and said slowly, in that case, let's sit down and have a good talk before the convention of the 10,000 races. Right now, the godly mainland is eyeing us and could invade at any time. The most beneficial situation for Tianhuang mainland is for the 10,000 races to coexist and not ignite the flames of war. Many cultivators were energized and saw hope again. Everyone finally understood the huge impact and significance of Su Zimo, revealing the truth of the primordial war, destroying the alliance of the primordial 6 races, and isolating the Protoss was secondary. Most importantly, the primordial races of Tianhuang mainland would sense the danger and not dare to start a war rashly. There's no problem for the 10,000 races to coexist. The underworld witch emperor was silent for a moment before saying slowly, the primordial era was a situation where the 10,000 races coexisted. However, the human race was not included. Emperor Qianlong and the others frowned. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, "What do you mean?" At that moment, Su Zimo was the only person on the human side who dared to speak to the emperors of the primordial races. Nothing. The underworld witch emperor sneered. That's the truth. In the primordial era, the human race was the weakest of the 10,000 races and was enslaved by the 10,000 races without any dignity or status. In fact, you were the vassals of the other races and food for them. What right do the human race have to coexist with the 10,000 races now? When this bloody history was spoken by the Nether Shaman Emperor, it seemed to be extremely ear-piercing and sharp. The faces of all the cultivators went pale, as they felt extreme humiliation. That's long in the past. Su Zimo shouted. After the ancient war, the primordial races were still mercilessly suppressed by the ancestors of the human race, the eternal human emperor, and could only live in a corner. What dignity and status did you guys have all these years? Su Zimo was not disadvantaged in terms of aura against a top emperor like the underworld witch emperor despite having just entered the Mahayana realm. That was because that was the truth. Su Zimo was not alone. Behind him was the bedazzling cultivation civilization, the ancient emperors who left their names in history, and the glorious era of the human race. He had the confidence to do so. When they heard that, the blood in the bodies of many cultivators seemed to be boiling and burning. Indeed, the human race had experienced a tragic period of darkness. However, the human race relied on their tenacious and unyielding spirit to survive in the savage primordial era. This continued until the ancient era when they rose and ruled Tianhuang mainland, creating a glorious and prosperous civilization. Although the human race was once weak, we reached a peak that even the primordial races could not reach. Su Zimo's voice was sonorous as he shouted. Back in the day, the eternal human emperor appeared and suppressed all the emperors. Which of you primordial races dared to stand out and be arrogant in front of the human emperor? At the mention of the eternal human emperor, many cultivators clenched their fists with agitated expressions. Just now, their sense of humiliation was swept away. After the passage of time, the reappearance of the human emperor's phantom caused the primordial races to tremble in fear. It was clear how terrifying the might of the human emperor back then was. Chapter 1638. The era of the human emperor is over. The demonic wind Rakshasa emperor snorted. Since ancient times, the human race has only produced one human emperor. How can you compare to us? How can you be on equal footing with us? In the eyes of the primordial races, the human race had always been the ants of the primordial era. The primordial races had long been enraged by letting the ants rule Tianhuang mainland for so many years. How could they give in so easily? The Emperor Qin Dragon said slowly. In this era, the rise of the primordial races is the general trend. No one can stop it. Why do you have to be so overbearing? The underworld witch emperor shook his head. We have already taken a step back. We promised the dragons that all races can coexist and avoid war. These humans are the ones who want a yard after taking an inch. If we are really overbearing, none of the humans in the Enigma Palace will be able to live. Everyone, please do me a favor. The Emperor Qin Dragon sighed. I really don't want to see the people of Tianhuang mainland suffer and war in the remaining years. The underworld witch emperor pondered for a while and said, all right. If that's the case, the human race must agree and give up all their territories. All self-cultivators go to Punglai Island. You are not allowed to set foot in Tianhuang mainland. Ah! Exclamations came from the crowd. Although the underworld witch emperor had given the human race a way out, he had chased all the human self-cultivators to Penglai Island. Penglai Island was huge, but it could not accommodate all the self-cultivators on Tianhuang mainland. Furthermore, there were hundreds of millions of citizens in Tianhuang mainland, all living beings in the world. The human cultivation civilization had indeed been preserved. But what about the people on Tianhuang mainland? The Emperor Chen Dragon frowned and asked, what about the hundreds of millions of mortals scattered all over Tianhuang mainland? These ants will naturally become the slaves of the other races and become our food. The Blood Emperor licked his lips in excitement. No. Without hesitation, Su Zimo rejected him flatly. Don't be in a hurry to reject. The Underworld Witch Emperor smiled and said, I can also give you sex and forces a second choice. Submit to the various primordial races, and you will naturally be able to keep your lives. You won't have to run to Penglai Island. Right, the Protoss should also go to Penglai Island in the future. The Golden Crow Fire Emperor looked at Tian Shenhuang and suddenly said, Brother Tian Shen, your Protoss has no objections, right? Sure. Shenhuang nodded. The Protoss was now the target of public criticism, so he could take a step back. Not to mention, once they reach Penglai Island, the Protoss can go on a killing spree. Penglai Island couldn't accommodate so many cultivators, but it was more than enough for the Protoss to reproduce and live on it. There was a commotion in the crowd. If the Protoss and human beings were all driven to Penglai Island, how many human cultivators would survive? The Golden Crow Fire Emperor's plan was extremely vicious. Emperor Qianlong sighed. You're pushing the human race to a dead end. Don't say that. The Golden Crow Fire Emperor smiled and said, Didn't the eternal human sovereign also force us to live in a corner? This is just karma. The Underworld Witch Emperor smiled and said, Emperor Qianlong, don't say that we didn't give the human race a chance this time. You have two choices. You can either submit or go to Penglai Island. The human race can choose. This plan was not only vicious, but it also left the problem to Emperor Qianlong. If Emperor Qianlong didn't do anything, the Protoss would definitely go on a killing spree when they arrived at Penglai Island. However, if he started a war with the Protoss now, Shenhuang, the Underworld Witch Emperor, and the others would be able to reap the benefits. Emperor Qianlong was in a dilemma. At this moment, Emperor Qianlong seemed to have aged a lot. There was also a commotion in the crowd. Some of the sects and forces were already showing signs of submitting. It was not their fault. Even super sects like the Heavenly Dipper sect and the Malevolent Earth sect had chosen to submit. What could they do? Would they really go to Penglai Island and be killed by the Protoss? At least they could still survive if they submitted to the primordial 5 races now. Emperor Qianlong gave up. The Underworld Witch Emperor laughed and said, Since the beginning of the convention of the 10,000 races, not a single human emperor has dared to show up. Why are you so stubborn? Shenhuang suddenly sneered and said, How about this? If any human emperor dares to show up, as long as they can take 3 punches from me, I can guarantee that I won't kill any human on Penglai Island. After a while no one responded. Many cultivators lowered their heads with gloomy expressions. Shenhuang laughed and said, Who dares to show up and fight? Still no one showed up. Ha ha ha. Laughter came from the primordial 5 races. The Divine Emperor looked at Su Zimo provocatively and sneered. Desolate Marshal, the emperors of the human race are a bunch of cowards who are as timid as mice. I'll wait for you on Penglai Island. Shenhuang hated Su Zimo to the core and naturally humiliated the human race mercilessly. Shenhuang, I'll take 3 punches from you. Right then, an old voice sounded from the depths of Enigma Palace. 6 cultivators tore through the hall and walked over slowly, each of them exuding a powerful aura. That was the might of an emperor. The emperor of the human race. The leader was the old storyteller of Enigma Palace. Judging from their Taoist robes, the 5 emperors beside him were Snowdrift Valley, Purple Firmament Sect, Overlord Palace, Pure Maiden Sect and Diamond Monastery. 6 human emperors had arrived. Suddenly Su Zimo frowned. He noticed that the auras of the 6 human emperors were unstable, as though they had expended quite a bit of energy. As for the old storyteller in the lead, his hair was already white, and his face was haggard. Although he was upright, he was almost exhausted. Beside Su Zimo, Lin Xuanji gripped his fists and pursed his lips with a sorrowful expression. "What's wrong with senior storyteller?" Su Zimo could not help but ask. Lin Xuanji shook his head without saying anything. "Fufu." Shen Huang looked at the old storyteller and the other 5 and laughed, mocking. "Why? That divine power's ranking isn't easy to control, is it?" The Emperor Weapon Divine Powers ranking had already vanished into the skies and returned to the ancient battlefield. The old storyteller stood out and said in a deep voice, "Shen Huang, let me tell you, even if the fortune of the human race is waning in this generation, not all of them are cowards. I can squash you to death with a single finger with that body of yours." Shen Huang sneered. "Storyteller, let me do it," the Emperor of Diamond Monastery said in a deep voice. "There's no need. Now that things have come to this, we can only try our best." The old storyteller smiled casually. "Who doesn't die? Even if I die here today, the dignity of the human race cannot be trampled on by a foreign race. Come on." The old storyteller walked forward. "You must have a death wish." Shen Huang was enraged and could not hold it in any longer. He extended a finger and pressed it down viciously towards the old storyteller. Divine light shone resplendently, and the voids trembled. Chapter 1639. The storyteller's expression was grim as he channeled his essence spirit and waved his hands in front of him. Suddenly he flung out his sleeves and shouted, "Universe in the sleeve!" Swoosh! Tian Shenhuang's finger did not manage to press on the storyteller's body. Instead, it was as though he had fallen into a boundless world. The universe in the sleeve was a peerless divine power. It was just a sleeve, but there was a universe within it. The offensive power of the peerless divine power was not strong, but it could contain everything. Even everyone in Enigma Palace could be contained within the small sleeve. Within the universe, Tian Shenhuang's finger burst forth with endless divine light and galloped continuously. Humph! Tian Shenhuang harumphed coldly. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying power emanated from his finger, as though it had transformed into a gigantic spear that was sharp and wanted to pierce through everything and judge everything. The storyteller's expression changed slightly. Shing! The storyteller's sleeve was instantly torn into pieces. The Heavenly Saint Emperor's finger also broke the Heavenly Saint Emperor's attack. A terrifying force slammed into the old storyteller's body and turned him into a bloody mist. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. Even that peerless divine power could not withstand a single finger from Tian Shenhuang. It was also a peerless divine power, but it was released by an emperor who had comprehended 6 peerless divine powers. Naturally, its power was several times stronger. Su Zimo saw it clearly. The storyteller was not dead. The moment Tian Shenhuang's finger tore through the universe in the sleeve, the storyteller sensed danger in advance and released his essence spirit to avoid the sure kill finger. The storyteller's essence spirit floated in midair and looked at the blood mist in front of him. However, he could not condense a physical body for a long time. It was not that he did not want to. It was that the power of his essence spirit was almost exhausted, and he could not even regenerate from a drop of blood. This scene made people feel sorrowful in their hearts. To think that a dignified emperor of the human race would fall to such a state. Storyteller! The surrounding rulers exclaimed in low voices. Everyone could sense the old storyteller's weakness. His primordial spirit and life aura were rapidly fading away. Even if Shen Huang didn't have to make a second move, the old storyteller would die soon. Master! Lin Xuanji took half a step forward and cried out. Although he was usually impolite to the old storyteller, their relationship was very deep. He'd never called the old storyteller master. But at this moment, he'd blurted out the word that was buried deep in his heart. Profound sovereign. Many cultivators had sorrowful expressions as they knelt on the ground. Everyone could tell that the old storyteller knew that he would die, yet he still wanted to step forward and protect the final dignity of the human race. Hee hee. Shen Huang had a mocking look on his face as he said disdainfully, "You can't even block a single finger of mine. How dare you jump out to die? I'll send you on your last journey." Shen Huang flicked his finger lightly, and a beam of divine light shot toward the old storyteller. Rumble. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning descended from the sky, smashed onto the divine light, and blasted it into pieces. Everyone was moved. Even a divine light casually flicked out by Shen Huang was enough to destroy most emperors. How could it be defeated so easily? Who could shatter the power of Shen Huang? Everyone looked up instinctively. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled above Enigma Palace as dark clouds shrouded it, forming a gigantic vortex that spun continuously with a terrifying might. A gigantic sea of lightning was formed within the cloud vortex. Thunder rumbled and lightning flashed brightly. An ancient palace descended slowly from the cloud vortex and appeared above Enigma Palace with a berserk might. As though it was a divine being, the human emperor's palace had appeared. The eyes of many cultivators were filled with endless fervent excitement, and they almost cheered. What did it mean for the human emperor's palace to appear at this moment? Was the human emperor about to descend upon Tianhuang mainland? The descent of the human emperor's palace reignited the hopes of many cultivators. The experts of the primordial races were scared pale and trembling. Just now, the phantom of the human emperor was enough to instill fear in them, let alone the human emperor's palace. However, the emperors of the primordial races present, such as the Underworld Witch Emperor, the Golden Crow Fire Emperor, the Heavenly Divine Emperor and the others, had calm expressions. They raised their heads and looked at the ancient palace, as their auras rose continuously. Even if the human emperor's palace descended, it would not be able to suppress them. Could the human emperor be descending? The red-headed ghost was shocked. The Emperor Chun Dragon shook his head. The human emperor has ascended to the upper world a long time ago. There's no way he can reverse the plains and come to Tianhuang mainland in the lower world. What do you mean? The red-headed ghost frowned slightly. In this universe, there are countless worlds like Tianhuang mainland. For example, God's mainland is one of them. The Emperor Chun Dragon explained. All of these worlds are on the same plane and their powers are similar. If they can survive the heavenly tribulation, they will ascend to a higher plane of power, which is the upper world that we speak of. There are extremely terrifying laws of heaven and earth between the upper and lower worlds. If the cultivators from the lower worlds want to ascend, they have to go through the heavenly tribulation. As for the immortals from the upper worlds, it's impossible for them to come to the lower worlds. Before the immortals from the upper worlds can descend to Tianhuang, they will be destroyed by the laws of heaven and earth. The red-headed ghost nodded. If the immortals from the upper worlds could casually descend to the lower worlds, the billions of worlds in this universe would have been in chaos. Su Zimo's expression changed. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Only he knew that the situation described by the Emperor Chun Dragon was not absolute. At least, Daiyu had been to Tianhuang before. Based on Daiyu's means, she was definitely from the upper worlds. Su Zimo asked, "Then why can the human emperor's palace descend from the upper worlds?" The Emperor Chun Dragon shook his head. The human emperor's palace has never ascended to the upper worlds. It's the last trump card that the human emperor left behind on Tianhuang mainland. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He could vaguely guess what was going on. The Emperor Chun Dragon continued. As a matter of fact, the primordial tribes have long since recovered to their peak, but they haven't done anything yet because of the human emperor's palace. The human emperor's palace has appeared 7 times, leaving behind the human emperor's legacy. That's just a facade. Its real purpose is to intimidate the primordial tribes. The owner of the human emperor's palace is the human emperor, but the person in charge of the human emperor's palace is someone else, known as the palace guardian. It's him. The mysterious old man in the human emperor's palace appeared in Su Zimo's mind. The palace guardian continues to pass down his legacy. In every generation, the palace guardian is the most powerful emperor of the human race. Then why do the primordial tribes dare to make a move in this generation? Su Zimo asked again. Because this generation's palace guardian is the same as me, already old, Emperor Chen Dragon said. 40,000 years ago, the palace guardian had his eyes on a cultivator and wanted to train him to be the next successor of the human emperor's palace. He even passed down the human emperor's mirror to the cultivator. It's a pity that the cultivator died 40,000 years ago, and the palace guardian was unable to find a suitable successor. If the cultivator from 40,000 years ago had not died, the cultivator would have grown to become the new palace guardian after all these years. Shen Huang and the others would not dare to make a move. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.